Well, hello everyone. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Happy Veterans Day. And first of all, thank you to all the veterans out there whose
Yes,
service and sacrifice we cannot thank you enough for.
everything he just said. It's also my little sister's birthday. It's like every year she had a holiday for her birthday. So, but
Yeah, Veterans Day is an interesting one with the news that we have today because
yeah,
we know that Rick Allen served in the military. Um, so, but it's doubly so because the whole reason that we have this justice system in America is because of the sacrifice and the blood that was let and the people that sacrificed their lives to preserve this system of justice that we have. And it's not perfect, it's not anywhere close to perfect. And whatever this jury decides, whatever verdict comes out, there are going to be people that have a problem with it on both sides. But it's one of the best justice systems in the world. So thank you to all the veterans that have sacrificed to help preserve this American way of life.
yeah. I just wish people could come to a better meeting of the minds when it comes to discussing a lot of things in this country anymore. I mean, it's crazy. And it even kind of spills over into the true crime community. Like, why force people to choose a side? And then why go at each other when they don't choose the side you want them to choose? It's ridiculous. I've seen a lot over the last couple of days alone of these so-called adults attacking other adults. And then are they the same ones that ask, what's wrong with our kids today? Are they watching you by any chance? Because I mean, it's gotten to a ridiculous point. And this morning, I was out here with my coffee, and lawyer, dropped a video. I guess he did it with Bob Mata last night, and it was a very good conversation. It was like two adults sitting there talking, having an honest discussion, whether which side you're on or not. It was an honest discussion about the evidence at hand and what it could or could not mean, and how we all interpret things differently. But it was just a good conversation, and it wasn't a shouting match or people screaming at you because you're supporting the defendant, and that means you hate the victims and all this weird stuff when it doesn't have to mean that at all.
Right. And the big news is obviously that we haven't officially announced yet, but it's all over every single true crime channel and news channel out there. The jury has apparently reached a verdict. They were called back in, and there was a deal where there was 2 hours that everybody was told there would be 2 hours between when the jury actually reached their verdict and when people would be let in for the reading of the verdict. So the public and the media was let in what, like 45 minutes ago. It's probably getting close to an hour ago.
Yeah, about that. Hmm.
So um, what used to happen during the hearings and the trial is the media and the public would be let in about an hour before, so the doors would open at 8 o'clock when the hearing wasn't scheduled till 9. So we may be hearing within a half an hour, it may be an hour, but we're going to be hearing a verdict here very soon. But
Um, yeah, I think
uh,
it'll be sooner, within the hour or so, because the judge was giving about a 2 hour notification, is what we've heard. Um, I guess for those to get their way back into the courtroom if they could. But for whatever reason, she was giving a 2 hour heads up notice that we have been told. So it's been about an hour since they were all scrambling outside the courthouse, getting their line formed, and getting, because they had that list formed and getting back in there. So hopefully we'll know something here soon.
yeah, and that goes back to what you were talking about, how people are so polarized, not just in this case, they're polarized in the Koberger case, they're polarized
Hmm.
in the presidential election and politics, and even local politics. They're so polarized and they want to be so angry and so vitriolic over people
Yeah.
who disagree with him over politics and over this. And here's the thing is we don't have any control over it. We don't have any control over this verdict. So getting so been out of shape and becoming so vitriolic. So in the Federalist Papers, the forefathers of this country wrote that the greatest threat to a constitutional republic, which is what this is, it's not a true democracy, this is a constitutional republic, but the greatest threat to democracy, to our constitutional republic, is the violence of faction. That is a term that was used multiple times in the
Oh
federal.
yeah.
So when people want to turn their disagreements into something that's vile and just something that's a violent action, then that's what threatens our justice system. That's what threatens our constitutional republic. So, like you said, the conversation between Bob Mata and Lawyer was a very, very educational
Yeah.
conversation just from the fact that they didn't agree on everything. And Lawyer said, I don't, I can't tell you if I'm going to agree or disagree with Bob Mata on anything or everything in the future, but I know this guy's a genuine dude, and that's all that
Yeah.
matters. So they sat down and they had an intelligent discussion. And Bob admitted that when Lawyer asked him, like, are you going to hate the jury if the jury comes back with a guilty verdict? And Bob's like, no, I can't, because there are open doors for them to come back with a guilty verdict. So we can't
Yeah.
hate them. We can't hate the jury. We can't hate their verdict. It's what our
If
country
any,
is founded on.
right. And I think a lot of this with this particular case, because you can't cry foul with every case that comes out. It's just not going to be a foul, not in every single case. You have to look at them for what they really are. And if all the energies would turn to the people in charge in this particular case, and all the secrecy type stuff and all the stuff we didn't understand going on, and all the judges' bizarre rulings, turn your energies towards that, because that's what caused a lot of the problems here. Um, and then taking in her pretty much trying to tie the defense down to where they can only talk about a little things here and little things there, which Bob made a good point. If you can't bring in your Odinism, then just forget about it altogether. Go in there and attack that darn evidence, because you got a good shot at that, because it wasn't 100%. There was no proof of anything. It was all circumstantial. So they, they did the best they could with what they were given. But I'm going to go back to say that being presented what we were able to see during the trial, they just didn't get there for me to vote 100%. Now, did the jury see things we didn't get to see? Yes. Did we get full reports on every single thing said in that courtroom? No. They tried their best to get it all out there to us. But there's still pieces here and there that we don't know about that were said and done. And I'm still learning more as I'm listening to the ones talk that have been there. Do you know what I mean? It was hard to follow them all each night. So I wasn't following them all each night. I was just like taking one or the other. But there are things that we just are still unclear about, and that's going to be Judge Gall's fault for not allowing cameras in the courtroom. That's not Rick Allen's fault. That's not Libby and Abby's parents' fault. That is Judge Gall's fault, and so people coming at each other when we know where we should be, who we should be angry at, and why. But we're going to just rather fight amongst each other and let them get away with it. So the next time they have another big high profile case in Indiana, they can do the same thing again, because the people are going to just turn on each other versus going after the ones who caused the chaos. That's
Oh,
my
there's not going to be another high profile case. There's never going to be another murder in Indiana or a double murder of teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Indiana.
my state's had many high profile cases, so Indiana needs to get with the times, because it's probably coming. Look at Idaho. Nobody ever heard of damn Idaho, and boom, we got 3 back-to-back high profile cases. Talking about Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and then Koberger. 3. That's costing that state a lot of money. Ada County has hosted all 3 of those. Well, 2 of the trials. They will be hosting the Koberger trial as well. There's a lot that goes into these cases, and what makes one a high profile case versus another. Media attention, that social media attention, those sorts of things. Um, Things that come out and grab us as they progress, like this one with the crazy filings and the motions and all the things the judge was doing and not doing. And just look at these things fairly and evaluate them on an individual level. Because I promise people, and they might get mad at me, and I don't understand why you get mad at somebody, but the way I look at the Koberger case and the way I look at Delphi are total opposites of each other. I promise you that, and I have been attacked in Koberger communities, not because I don't come out and tell you that guy's guilty. I don't know, but I don't come out and say he's innocent. Like, don't force me to pick a side. That turns me off more than anything, because then you got an agenda, it sounds like.
Yeah, there are definite polarized sides of this. There are definite Richard Allen is Bridge Guy, and Bridge Guy is the culprit. Bridge Guy is the murderer, and there's the opposite side. Richard Allen is innocent. Free Richard Allen, and I don't begrudge either one of those sides their
No.
opinion and their right to voice their opinion. They can do
Oh,
that all
yeah.
they want, but I'm not going to sit there in one of your live streams or one of your podcasts and listen to you go on and on about that for hours and hours. I will listen to your presentation of facts and evidence, and I will
Yeah.
allow it to sway my opinion. But if your opinion is just based on Richard Allen is Bridge Guy, and how can you say anything different than that? Well, because we have facts and evidence that
Right.
are contradictory to Richard Allen possibly not being Bridge Guy. Like there are facts and evidence, and there
Eh,
definitely is not conclusive facts and evidence that he is Bridge Guy. So for you to
Right.
say it absolutely and conclusively, and you can't have any other opinion than that, is just ridiculous.
And I have the opinion that he very well could be Bridge Guy, but I also have the opinion that you haven't proved to me Bridge Guy did anything other than walk out on that bridge that day. You didn't prove to me he said guys down the hill. They didn't prove to me that he was the one, that he was following them so closely in the alleged video. We haven't seen it for ourselves, but I've heard the descriptions, and I've tried to clarify what everybody in court saw as well. And I've talked to you about what you saw that day, especially in the photo they show of Libby, or the photo of Abby, where Bridge Guy's apparently right up on them all of a sudden. That's an altered, enhanced video. It wasn't like, boom, there he is. Look, he's walking right there on them. Because if he did, he sprinted down that bridge like nobody's business and didn't care if he fell through or fell off. He's just like, watch me run like Superman here. I'll be on these girls in 2 seconds. No, I mean, show me different. But I was never convinced that that wasn't Richard Allen on that bridge, especially because he does appear to be dressed the way Richard Allen described that day. That still did not mean he was doing anything nefarious or even anything to the girls. Could he have been on the bridge and walked out to the first platform like he said, looked at the fish, looked at the phone, turned around, walked back? Yep. Could she have happened to catch him in her video as she was filming Abby? Yep. That don't mean he did anything, especially if he's all the way at the north end and they're already at the south end. And then all of a sudden you got another image that comes in with boom, he's right behind them. And then you got these voices saying guys down the hill, which are apparently said at different times. It's not a one sentence, but you can't prove he said those words. So I don't trust your Bridge Guy video to even be what it is it
Right, but
showed me.
you have a sworn public officer who most people in Indiana just culturally, politically, socially accept the word of a law enforcement officer as above and beyond a standard witness. You have Sheriff Tony Lickett on the stand saying, I don't think that it's humanly possible, quote unquote, it's not humanly possible that somebody else's voice is the one saying down the hill. Even though
Well,
that's not on video, we don't see Bridge Guy's lips moving ever, ever. We
he
don't
needs
see,
to define humanly possible because him, Lord. He needs to
Yeah,
get with Magic Hands.
well,
Maybe Magic Hands can explain that to him.
well, Magic Hands goes in the same boat.
Yeah.
Magic Hands, Doug Carter and Tony Liggett and Tobe Lesenby all belong in the same boat of being subject to the jury being able to judge their credibility. And maybe with this jury being brought in from out of county, maybe they were able to to give a little more weight to the actual testimony versus whether or not this witness is a law enforcement officer or not. Maybe, maybe not. It's still Indiana, and it's still a largely majority white population in Allen County, which doesn't have anything to do with anything in this case, but
No.
there's still a, especially in rural Indiana, there's a deference to law enforcement, which is funny because there's also a resistance to law enforcement. Like government's
Yeah.
not government's not
Mm.
going to tell me what to do, but
Yeah, that happens here as well. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, well, they got to be right, right? It's like make that make sense. It's like the people. It's like you talk out both sides of your ass sometimes. Not you, but people. Saying things like that. Because I get it. It happens around here. The government can't tell me what to do. Well, they're right about this. Well, y'all pick and choose what they're right about. They're only right when it's like something you view as right. That's the thing. And it's like I avoid politics. I avoid those conversations. I don't want nothing to do with that messy stuff. I don't like none of them. Let's make that clear. None of y'all, they all suck in my eyes. So there's not even a conversation to be had with me there. But I saw the level of going at each other on Facebook during the pandemic. And then I noticed after all that began to die out and all the political stuff kind of calmed down, all of a sudden we had a bunch of conspiracy theorists and infighting happening in true crime. It's like, did y'all get bored and had nowhere else to go in politics? So you trickled over here? I mean, I don't understand why we can't even have conversations anymore. But I guess I'm not going to continue to try to understand. I'm just going to do me and do you, and we'll come out and have our conversations and hope for the best. The other night when we had True Grit Crime come up, that was a great conversation. I'm glad we finally got her to come on panel and have the time to talk to us. Because I think a lot of us try to get there by understanding what we're seeing and not because we're told constantly this is what's happening. I will come out and share with what I learned and why I think this, but I'm not going to come out here and tell you this is absolutely one way or the other, because how the hell am I supposed to know? And especially if I don't show you something to back that up, you know, bring a good
right.
solid receipt or a good solid theory or why we think this and have a discussion about it. There's too many times in these cases, it just, you turn on a live stream and it's, I'm telling you this. And okay, well, again, how do you know? It's your opinion and I get it. And maybe I'm there with you and maybe I'm not.
Yeah, it's a tough road to hoe either way. And I actually, honestly, I actually developed a little more respect for True Grit Crime after she came on, because she had her opinion, but she wasn't like, my opinion is the law. She was like, she listened to our conversations back and forth, and she was like, well, this is how I formulated my opinion about that, but it's not necessarily absolutely the absolute truth in the way that things work. So I
Yeah.
did appreciate that about her quite a bit.
Yeah, I did too. And that's the kind of conversations I like to have, is when people can do that. I know there's going to be a lot of feelings about this case. There were a lot with the Casey Anthony case, and rightfully so. People are entitled to it. But I honestly, in being a Florida resident, I came to terms with that verdict before it came out. Because what are you going to do once it comes out and you disagree with it? You're going to spend the next 20, 30 years following this lady around and harassing and saying all this. Are we going to go out and really investigate? Or who's going to do anything? You know what I mean? Does it come? Should we let it consume us at times? Probably not, but we do let things get to us. And it's not because, and none of us want to see an innocent person go to prison, but I also don't want to see a guilty person walk if they are guilty of horrible crimes. And I can't help but think about the girls. Yeah, we don't want this innocent man to be done any more wrong than he appears to have been done. But all that for what? For because you can't prove he did anything to those girls that day. You can try with your circumstantial stuff and your altering and enhancing of things and your magic bullet and all this craziness, but you didn't even come close, and then we got this, well, 5 years of investigation. One day you'll know what we know. Well, apparently y'all didn't know anything until you found your little lost tip. And then boom, lo and behold, you had an arrest within a week and pretty little neat wrapped up in a bow. That's all you needed to come out and tell us for 5 years of investigating. I'm still waiting on Doug Carter to come out and do that. We got enough evidence out there of him stating, I'm going to come and tell you everything I know someday. I think that day is today, Mr. Carter. And I'm so tired of hearing that on the internet as well. Is today the day? I don't know. Is today the day Doug Carter going to come out and tell me every damn thing he said he knew? Because I don't think he knew anything. I'm getting a little aggravated with him. I'm a little aggravated with the authorities, period, in that town, in that state. Because how'd you let this happen? You let this get to a very messy situation for whatever reason. I don't even know if they can justify it anymore. Keep the integrity of the case. What case? There's nobody else to investigate, or there is. You make up your mind. You're wishy-washy at best. You guys have the same profile picture, Courtney and Tam. Threw me off. You still with us, Joe? Uh-oh. I'm checking the comments too. No, they haven't come out and said anything. I got Twitter on as well. I tried to go live. I was going to go live from my laptop, but it was having some serious issues or something. Didn't want me to do it. Hey, Butterfly, you're good. I know you're probably working.
Can you hear me now?
You were. Have you been talking? Because couldn't hear you.
Somehow I got muted, like on through StreamYard. Like usually when I mute, I do it through my headset, but I got muted on StreamYard. I think somebody's messing with me.
Oh, I don't. I only do it if I'm in StreamYard. Like I don't go try and. If I start messing with too many different things, I'm going down. Something's gonna happen.
Right, exactly.
So I've been
Something
trying to
almost
keep
went
it.
down there.
I've been trying to keep it pretty simple. Yeah, I was trying to go live from my laptop earlier, and it's wanting to be ridiculous today, not wanting to cooperate. So I was like, ugh.
Right. So my biggest fear in this is that he will be found either guilty or not guilty, and we won't know if anybody else
Oh my gosh.
was
Okay.
involved.
5 minutes ago, Defense Diaries. He's been found guilty on all counts.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a wow. Like, I don't even know what to say. You know what I mean? I just guilty on all counts. Now I'm pissed and I want to see that evidence the judge thought we didn't need to see or deserve to see. And should
Yes.
we elect?
Sleuthy
My
Goosey
God,
is saying guilty on all counts.
damn. Like, I really want to know what their biggest struggles were with the evidence. So, like, even Bob and lawyer, were going over that this morning, always wanting to know what the jury was thinking. Because that helps moving forward if you're a defense attorney for other cases when you question your jurors and things like that. But I wonder what their biggest contentions were that they've wrestled with over these last couple of days that got them there guilty on all counts like that.
I don't have any words.
Me either. Like I want one of them to come out right now and just start talking and tell me what do you mean? What made you think that? You know, what got you there? Then I'm going to look for that judge and it's like, oh my God, I got so much to say to her. Now I wonder, the appeals process is all he has to look forward to now, and all that his, hey JC, I don't know if you just joined in, JC, but we just got a verdict, guilty on all counts, which is a little shocking to most of us who've been watching the trial and the evidence that was coming out. Yeah, I'd like to talk to one of those jurors. I don't even know if they will come out and talk to people, you know, or when or if they will. Sometimes they come out right away and start talking. Sometimes it takes them a little bit longer. But I want to know what got them there and what was their biggest issues. Was it the gun? Was it the weapon? You know, the unspent bullet botched science experiment? Is that what got them there? Or was it this enhanced video? I mean, shit, what was it?
This is this is tough.
It is tough. It is, because, like, you know, I'm willing to accept whatever the jury had. I mean, I know why they got the outcome they did in the Casey Anthony case, because I was able to watch the entire trial with my own eyes and my own ears and hear and see everything going on every day, all day. And I knew why they were going to get to that verdict. But to this one, I'm not so sure. Even, you know, especially hearing the reports coming out each and every day about the shoddy investigation itself and the lack of concrete evidence they had on Richard Allen. If we're to a point now where we can bring in enhanced videos and not prove they're real, or time constraints on when the guy entered the bridge, when he ended up behind these girls, I think I'd have drove that home a little bit more as a defense attorney if I really thought my guy didn't do it. There were a lot of things I think they could have really hit harder on as far as the evidence goes. And then you look at Gull not letting them bring in the metallurgist. Okay, fine, we'll get another ballistics person in here, you know, and which they did, but it wasn't enough, in my opinion. It should have been, I think that, I don't know, I think a lot of that evidence could have been attacked a little harder than it was.
Right. And two things that I learned from watching Bob and Lawyer together. One of them was Bob's Bob's idea that you just like abandon the third party Odinist aspect, like quit fighting that fight and just attack the timeline.
Yeah.
Like the timeline doesn't make sense, and it still doesn't make sense.
Nope.
To this day, the timeline doesn't make sense, but it wasn't attacked enough, in my opinion. And yeah,
it really wasn't. I mean, because when it comes down to the trial, it's going to come down to the evidence presented. What is the state presenting against my client? Now let me go do my job and attack that evidence. We see Ann Taylor doing a beautiful job, or attempting to do a beautiful job of that in Idaho. Every little piece she gets her hands on, she's attacking. That's her job. I hold nothing against her for doing that. And I don't think these attorneys did a terrible job. I really don't. I'm no attorney. I'm just an armchair sleuth. But I've watched a lot of trials, and I feel like they could have attacked that evidence a little harder on as far as it even being accurate information. You got your three witnesses that the prosecution marched in here, put on the stand. They all described a different person than the man sitting in the courtroom, than the man you claim is your bridge guy. None of them even described the bridge guy as the guy they saw that day. What were they even doing in here at this point? I think they should have attacked little Miss Sarah Carball's I want to be a part of this story situation, because in every case we have somebody who wants to be a part of the case. I call it the WSU Mom Kim effect. Was that Sarah Carball? what about this missing hour interview of this muddy bloody guy? Another missing interview? Let me call, I mean, come on. A lot of that can come back to bite them on appeal, not the defense, but the prosecution. Because they've already set up the third party stuff. They've already set up that there could be exculpatory evidence in this case. And most attorneys don't let exculpatory evidence go. They fight it until they can't anymore. We heard this talk out of Ann Taylor in the beginning over there in Idaho. Oh, Bethany's got exculpatory evidence, does she? Because we've not heard any more about it. And we know y'all went and talked to her. So apparently it wasn't too exculpatory. So I'm willing to let that go until Ann brings that back up. But the defense did try to bring that up over here and were shut down, But I understand that the nexus part they want, but you didn't show me a nexus that Rick Allen was there either, except for this unspent bullet that you found. And the way you conducted your testing on that bullet just didn't make no darn sense, not even to a layperson.
So we're gonna see reactions from both sides. This is so ironic that this happens so close after the presidential election. And I'm not getting political here, but reactions from the people are going to be very, very similar. Where you're going to have people who are going to be like, "I told you he was guilty. I told you from day one that he was guilty, and there's no doubt he was guilty. And I told you all along he was guilty." And then are going to be people on the other side who are like, "I'm still not convinced that he is, even if the election results came back and said that he swept 48 states. I don't believe it. Even if the results come back and all 12 jurors said he's guilty, I don't believe it. I think they were flim-flammed. They were led down a path."
And I'm going to blame the politicians for letting it get out of hand to that point, because look where y'all left us. We are in a country where we just got to fight about every darn thing. We can't just have a conversation anymore and work stuff out, meet in the middle, and do what's best for everybody. No. We got to have these lines drawn and these sides picked, and y'all better jump on one or the other. Well, okay, I'm going to stay over here in my little corner and fend for myself. It's going to be crazy. And people were already being attacked on Twitter over the past couple of days, especially just for having a different view. We saw Frank Meister do it to a troll he thought was Lawyer Lee. He freaking came unglued on his live talking about her, bad about her. And it wasn't even her, it was a troll. And trust me, she don't care about what Frank's got to say. Lawyer Lee was here long before this Delphi case and long before another YouTube lawyer in the Koberger case. She was here before all that. So I think she'll be around long after it is gone too. But I'm not sure where a lot of these people will be once Delphi is over. Just like some of the ones in the Koberger case. I've not seen anything else come from them but Koberger. Don't know where they'll be once that case is over. And you can tell when the jealousies start, when Delphi gets too much attention, all of a sudden we got stuff coming back off in it's like, come on, are y'all fighting for our attention? I'm going to get back to that case in a minute, I promise. But right now it's going to be fine. There shouldn't have to be all this, but it is what it is. So be kind to each other out there. And remember, there are trolls and there's bullies and there's, keyboard warriors and all the stupid things that they're known to do. I can't argue with those people because it'll end up ugly. I'll be told them off. It's just so sad.
Well, if you are a fundamental constitutionalist, then you believe in the sanctity of our Constitution. But when the politicians can go to Washington, D.C., and can serve as a quote unquote public servant in our national Congress and work their way up from congressman to senator to maybe vice president, maybe president, and spend 40 years there and become millionaires and even billionaires just by being a public servant, they're having us fight each other over red versus blue, conservative versus liberal,
Mm-hmm.
left versus right, so they can maintain their positions in power and maintain their source of wealth and building their wealth. I mean, it's a distraction, and that's just my opinion. And don't hate me for it, but they're distracting us from where the real problems are.
Oh,
Like,
definitely. And if any of y'all are, or if you don't know who Eric Church is, go Google Eric Church on you. I go to YouTube, pull up Eric Church and a song called "The Snake." That's the way I feel about politics. Either one of them will kill you dead, long as they got you where they want you, fighting. We can continue on, right? And that it's like, stop it. Quit being an idiot. I'm not, quit insulting our intelligence here. You just want us to get over here and fight amongst ourselves. We don't keep our eye on the big prize. And that's what's going to happen here. Someone's goal has to be accountable at some point. And will it come out during the appeals process that how wrong she did this case? I wouldn't have as many issues with this case if she hadn't done some of the bizarre things that she was doing with the rulings. That's what causes people to think you're hiding things, that you're doing things secretly. In Idaho, that was a big thing. Oh, the prosecution's hiding. They're hiding. Well, no, if you listened to the actual court hearings and his attorneys speak, Ann was wanting what the FBI had. Remember, we done got rid of them in Delphi. They don't matter. People are over there hollering in Koberger's case. Oh, the FBI sucks. Well, y'all sure want them in Delphi, but you don't want them in the Koberger case. Make up your minds, people. But Ann was fighting the FBI to get information only they had. And she got it. She had to do her TURI report. A lot of us already knew what that was. A lot of us already understand touch DNA because of the Koberger case. There's a lot of things she's had to do over there. She got her subpoena for the FBI because she wants their notes, not just their written report. We want the notes that you wrote the reports from, Dan Doolin. That's why that kind of stuff's important. And that's why she's being as thorough as she's being. She has to be effective counsel. And boy, she's driven that home at every hearing. In order for me to be effective, and now one of her newest things is you got to take the death penalty off the table because you forced my client to choose between effective counsel and his right to a speedy trial. If we'd have said we want the speedy trial, I couldn't have been effective counsel. But you forced us into making a choice of one or the other. The judge is sitting there looking at her like, what? We're trying to change the rules in the mid-game? But okay. But, it's crazy how people get, in these cases. And when you don't know, and one thing I got tired of hearing in the Koberger case in the very beginning, a document would get read. This doesn't make sense. Well, go make it make sense. Google's your friend. It's the information superhighway at your fingertips. You don't know what a term means, go Google it and find out. Let's explore it together and try to figure it out instead of screaming, it don't make sense. It's got to be wrong. They got to be hiding something. Maybe you don't know what you're reading. I mean, and you got the judge over here in this case just denying, and it made it look super fishy. Like Bob said, something was not smelling right in Delphi.
and that's where we're at right now, because we have the people on the side of wanting transparency and believability and justice for Abby and Libby, and
Yeah.
the people that want justice for Abby and Libby are 40 to 50% unsatisfied with any level of justice that we see from this verdict.
Yes, because you can't trust it in this. I mean, not that you can't trust the verdict. I can't trust the evidence that got them there because we saw the different things that were going on. And if we want to get to a place in this country where there isn't just a ton of fighting constantly, with transparency. Remember, that was a big word thrown around in a couple of presidential debates ago or whatever it was. Transparency. Let's all just be transparent. Well, where is this transparency? Still haven't seen it to this day. I haven't from either side. So I quit even messing with them. I quit looking at politics. I quit. I don't care. Should, but I don't. You haven't given me a reason to care about anything in a long, long time. Same thing over here. You know, what is the point? Be transparent. This court and this judge was never transparent. I get gag orders in cases. You don't want a bunch of people on the internet tearing apart and evaluating your evidence that's come out. And you know, like say like in Florida, we get all these big discovery dumps. We see all the evidence out there, and we can sit here and pick it apart and talk about it. So I get wanting to keep your gag order in place until trial. But at the same time, your attorneys let a lot of things come out in their filings, and that's what you got to pay attention to and what's said in court. And over here, this judge was like, no, we're not even going to I'm not even going to read the motion. Shit, I don't need to do that. I'm not even going to have a hearing. I don't care. Lady, that might really be a problem for you on the appeals process. The position you seem to think you hold that nobody can touch might be touchable after all. And I hope it is, honestly.
We're going to find out, because
Yeah.
we saw in the case where he went, so Rosie and Baldwin were discharged as quote unquote ineffective counsel or incompetent or whatever it was she told them to resign.
Yeah.
A year ago ish. That went all the way to Indiana Supreme Court, and the Indiana Supreme Court overturned her. But on the same token, there was a motion filed to have her removed from the case, to have Frances Gull removed from the case, that was denied. And I can't remember if it was denied by the actual Supreme Court or a lower court or whoever it was denied by, but that was denied. So we got mixed messages right from the beginning in this thing. We got mixed messages that, I can't go all the way back
So,
into it again.
well, it doesn't make any sense, because if the Supreme Court says, oh, you didn't apparently file right to get the judge recused, you got to go back to the lower court. Well, the lower court is her. So how many times can she say, no, I'm not recusing myself, before someone steps in and makes that decision for her?
Yeah.
Who fairly evaluates the situation and says, you know what, Gull, maybe you do need to step back for a minute. Or actually, guys, she's been right the whole time. Who's that person? Who oversees her to do that? You know, and if there's no checks and balances there, the buck stops there with her. She gets to make all the last decisions, and right or wrong. No, there are judges who get in trouble all the time for making bad decisions, making immoral decisions, making bad law decisions. We've had judges texting with their bailiff during trial, laughing at things going on in their courtroom. I can't remember the judge's name, but it was a while back. We've had all kind of things. Just because they're sitting on a robe on a bench, or they're in a, you know, they're on the witness stand and they're wearing law enforcement, that doesn't make them automatically a better person or more credible. We've seen too many things happen where, and I'm not one to down law enforcement, because I have law enforcement in my family. I want to always uphold them and believe they're doing the right thing, but we know they're not all always doing that. You know, that is what it is. We've seen it in the Murdaugh case alone. We've seen it here in Delphi. We've seen it in other cases. Crystal Rogers' case has these elements as well. Small town, pat my back, I pat your kind of thing. You know, these things happen, and there's bad cops out there. There's good cops, all the things. This case just, if we can't explore these and look at them for what they are versus fighting about it. Oh, you're all just saying that, or you're just out for clicks and views. You got to say that to get your clicks and views. No, I don't got to do anything. I'm not monetized. Joe's not monetized. If I was that person, I'd be out here right now holding a stream about how Kohberger's innocent, if I was concerned about clicks and views. Because that's how a lot of those channels grew their subs, was to come out and say just that. Because that's what the pulse of this community wanted at the time. And if you came out and tried to speak and say anything other than that, you're ridiculed. And it's wrong. It's just, I don't like seeing it, you know. I'm looking at chat too.
Well, here's the thing, is that all of us who have such a sour taste in our mouth over this, and we have to give the jury credit.
Mhm.
It seems like they did their duty. They were fairly attentive. They paid attention, and all 12 of them came to the conclusion that he's guilty. So there's something to be said for that. But most of us on the outside looking in who have been deep into this case from day one are not convinced that if he's guilty, he did it by himself. So are there other bad guys out there that are never, ever going to be investigated and may cause other things to happen in the future, like go on doing bad deeds because they got away with it once? I mean, that's pure speculation, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, the reasonable doubt was, well, none of us would be sitting here with all this reasonable doubt if we didn't see out of their own investigation what they were investigating, that they, decided wasn't nothing to see here in the end. But it's like, well, what made you clear those guys if there was no DNA to tie them? Well, you've seen the Westfall interviews as well. A lie detector he was given, taking his DNA. What for? What did you need his DNA for? According to y'all, you didn't test some of the DNA that you do have because you're waiting on that magic day to show up where you might get something out of that DNA. None of that makes sense, you know? So tell us how you cleared these guys other than saying they had an alibi. This guy also had an alibi. He was there that day. So you're going to see him parked over there by the CPS building. You're going to see his car on that camera, and he's going to be there during the time he said he was. But nobody described him. They described other people they saw. He was there just like everybody else. Circumstantially, if they didn't have that bullet, would they have a guilty verdict? Because you had nothing to tie him to the scene of the crime other than the bullet. There's no DNA. We have DNA in Koberger. No known connection between Alan and the girls. We hear that over in Koberger's case as well, but we still got some DNA in that house. Eventually, we're going to get to tackle that DNA. Ann Taylor is going to do a motion to keep the sheath out. Does it succeed or not, I don't know yet, but she's going to try. But that's the only difference in these two cases, that one piece of evidence. There's DNA in Koberger. I know there's a lot of big contention about how it got there and all that, but it's there.
Well, here's the thing, though, that Bob made a really good point of both this morning / last night in his talk with Lawyer, but also as his man on the street video that he did right before the jury verdict came back. The confessions, there's the difference, because Brian Koberger has not confessed one time, and Richard Allen confessed 61 times. So
yeah,
so
Brian Koberger was just out riding around stargazing on a cloudy night, all alone. For those people who said he was he was there with other people and all this stuff. No, he says he was alone. He never says, "Oh, I might have been near there. I had so-and-so riding with me." None of that. I was alone on the other side of the county stargazing. Well, we'll see. Yeah, he found guilty on all counts. Squishy. It's Truth and Transparency posted that the jury said, she said no one would even look at each other. The jury, or like the people outside, I could imagine the jury was probably taken around back again. Can you imagine the people are trying to get interviews with those jurors now?
Somebody's going to get an exclusive, and it's
not. Oh, they will.
It's not going to be me.
It might be me. I'll be holding my beer. No, I don't even drink. Let me jump on my broom and fly on over to Indiana, because I'm going to get me some interviews with some people. Where's True Grit? We need her some boots on the ground stuff here. It's probably a really heavy day there, with the families. Are they convinced 100% this guy? I know they want to.
I know for a fact that several family members do believe that he is the bad guy 100%.
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
will be happy with this verdict 100%. I know for a
And
fact.
I'm sure. I mean, I guess you can't blame them. None of us sit where they're sitting. None of us have had to live their lives for past 7 years. And let me tell you, it's not easy to live without a child, no matter how you lose them. But when you do under this type of circumstance, and then all that goes on behind it, trying to get there, maybe there is never a true closure when you lose a child. You learn to live with it. Once this type of thing is over, is it ever truly over in their minds? Is it easier to live with their new norm that became their normal 7 years ago? Are they able to get to a point where they can start processing some of it? Because people can tell you, oh, grief's a journey, it is a process. It's different for everybody. And the time it takes during each phase is different for everybody. It's not the same. But when you are dealing with this type of situation where the loss was because of murder, and then somebody's finally charged, and then there's this long drawn out court process, and all the years just went by, I don't know, if there's any part of them that was ever not 100% convinced, are they now? Can they start getting to a point where they can get to more closure? That's not even the right word. I hate using that word, but to live with it a little better, to think the girls finally got justice. But then you get people like us who see that this was so circumstantial. Did they get the justice? It's like, I don't know, man.
I just I don't
And
see it.
now
And we could
she's Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading Courtney's statement here,
go
or
ahead.
her comment. It says that now she's not lifting the gag order until the sentencing. That's usually the case. I wonder when they will do sentencing, how long it'll take before they do that part, that phase.
Is the jury involved in that in Indiana? I heard that the jury gets to go home now, and it's up to the judge to determine sentencing.
Usually it's a judge. Well, in Florida, I mean, it depends. I don't know I have no clue
Well,
about Indiana.
they definitely can't sequester the jury until sentencing. So I would guess they're being dismissed now, and it's not going to be in their bailiwick to determine sentencing right now.
I don't know. Usually, and a lot of times you get in Florida, and I think it's this way across the country, but you get your witness impacts, your victims impact statements come in usually before the sentencing.
Right, but
But
if the jury is going to do sentencing, then the jury hears those victim impact statements. So they would have to
yeah,
sequester them for like another month probably to be able to get to that point, and I don't think they're going to do that. So
yeah, I would be like, no, judge, that's on you. I'm going home. I've done my part. You can't keep me here any longer.
yeah,
That's gonna be on you, lady.
right. I came all the way down here to Lafayette from Fort Wayne, and this sucks. This sucks worse than Fort Wayne. I want to go home.
Yeah. I mean, do your job, judge. I mean, you can make all these rulings. I'm sure you can handle the sentencing. Um, it all needs to become unsealed. I mean, even if, what good's it going to do when we get the information? Are we going to read it and be more like, oh, appalled? Are we going to read it and go, well, now it makes sense as to why they did, the jury did this, or is it going to make us have so many more questions? Are they going to? I mean, we can't see the interviews with the alternate suspects. They don't even have those, and that's not going to be a part of this case. But still, we need all that stuff unsealed. I want to see the actual videos myself of the 43 seconds. I mean,
I
it's not
will
going to make a difference, but
I will
I
let
still
you
want to see them.
dollars to donuts right now that she or some other judge seals them for an extended period of time, that we don't get to see them in like half of our
And
lifetime or whatever.
and I don't even understand what good that's going to do, or what sense it makes for them to do that, because we can and we told y'all so. Ha ha ha! We're not going to let you see this stuff. Like, come on, lady, stop it. There's enough attorneys in this country. I think that they continue to file motions against her. Eventually, I mean, they had to do that to get the PCA unsealed in this case. Because they're generally not sealed documents, the probable cause affidavit. You know, everybody was like that in the Cutler case. Well, it wasn't sealed. It became unsealed the minute the dude was arrested, and we all read that thing multiple times. You know, we still reading that darn thing. Um, so to fight to even have to get this PCA unsealed, and then to know he went straight to prison within days of the arrest, and all the craziness that ensued since then. It's like, wow, Indiana, this is how y'all do things. Well, the rest of the country's like, what the hell you doing over there? Get with the program, get with the times, get with technology. You know, a fixed camera. It don't have to move, judge. Look, it works just like this. Get over there and teach them. You know, and to know then to find out she was actually the judge. Gull is on the board to want to put cameras in courtrooms, but then she's going to come out and say, well, not in this one though. It's like, lady, go sit down with your authority. We're a little tired of it. Yeah, Casey Anthony sat in the county jail the entire 2 years that she waited to go on trial. Every jailhouse call with mommy and daddy was put all over Nancy Grace every night because Florida is good about giving you everything. We had a field day. We tore apart everything you could possibly tear apart in that case for 2 solid years. I was right there for all of it with Nancy Grace every single night. I know how she operates. You know, I know what Florida will give you during a trial, pre-trial. So that's why I get a little like frustrated when I'm looking at other cases because their sunshine laws aren't like ours. Even though they've adopted a lot of them, they're not like ours 100%. So, yeah.
Well, here's so one of the major bones of contention in this that I have is how horrible the Westville Correctional Facility is.
Yeah.
It's like it's Shawshank. It's like your imagination gone wild. And a lot of people are saying, well, shouldn't the FBI investigate this? The FBI won't investigate it until there's a local or state complaint sent directly to the FBI. Like the Cuyahoga County jail in Ohio is one of the worst in the nation. It has a long history of prisoner abuses, of segregation abuses, isolation, and prisoner treatment. And that didn't get investigated until 2020 when the local warden sent in or ex-warden sent in a complaint to the FBI. So it's
Does it go to the Justice Department or the FBI though?
the FBI.
Okay.
So they maybe they did something with the Justice Department before they went to the FBI, but eventually the complaint ended up in the lab of the FBI. So I don't know how it got there, but that's going to have to happen with Westville too. That's got to happen with Westville.
Well, maybe the FBI will do it on their own because they know they were not allowed. They were not welcomed in this case.
Well,
I'm sure they know where their evidence was, and they see that what this verdict was just came down was. Maybe they'll be like,
No, that's all federal agencies though. Federal agencies
I know.
cannot step into local and state actions, including natural disasters like hurricanes. Like if Florida gets wiped out completely by a hurricane tomorrow, FEMA can't come in until Governor DeSantis asks FEMA to come in.
Well, yeah, he has to declare a state of emergency, and all these things have to happen before all that begins to happen.
Right, and
But
it's the same way with prisons, with state prisons. The FBI can't just step in and say, hey, we heard something about maybe something's going on here where you guys are abusing prisoners. No, there has to be a complaint to the federal government, whether it's Department of Justice or the FBI itself. I think either way would probably work, but it's not going to happen without a complaint.
well, maybe somebody in the department will self-claim or do it anonymously. I don't know. They need to be looking into something over there in the Delphi, Carroll County area, you know, figure out what the hell just happened over there. And of course, I would love to know why they didn't want the FBI back in on that case. What was it? What was the big contention there? Because that's not normal. That's the abnormal, you know. We saw that a little bit in the Sebastian Rogers case. Everybody's like, oh, we're going to do a petition and get the FBI. That's not how it works. Like you said, The state has to ask them in, you know. But when we're talking about this type of thing, with the judge being possibly doing things that are not accurate, you know, the Justice Department's complaints can be filed there, you know, through citizens even. Will it get anywhere? I don't know, but there's things that can happen. I just don't know what the right avenue to take with her would be. But
It's going to
there's
be
just,
it's going to be interesting to see. And I just had this thought spontaneously spark in my head. I wonder if Andrea Burkhart is going to file another follow-up motion to her other motion that she filed now that we have a verdict.
she might, you know, I mean, I would keep, if it was me, I would continue to press the issue if I could legally,
Right.
you know, I had the avenue to do so, I'd do it.
The problem is she's not, I don't believe she's licensed as an attorney in the state of Indiana. So her standing is probably not as strong as it would be if she were an Indiana licensed attorney. But there are prisoners and there are prisoners' rights advocates groups out there, like the one that's at IU that Bob Mata has talked to a couple of times. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll see something from them in this case.
Well, even though he was found guilty, there's still so much evidence there that his rights were violated along the way. You know, just from the putting him in where he was incarcerated at. And even if you did already have depression and anxiety issues, that's going to make a situation like that tenfold. And then we have the sketchiness of the doctor coming in and talking about his condition. You know, one minute he's fine, and next minute he's psychotic. Oh, now we're injecting him. And why are y'all doing all that if he's fine? And if he's faking everything, why are you even bothering to treat him with medication?
And
That how you correct fakeness? Let's dope them up and make them look worse than they are, and that'll show you he was faking. I mean, that makes
no,
I don't understand that part of it either.
if you were to inject Haldol or whatever the heck that medicine is into a patient that was not psychotic and not suffering psychotic symptoms, your license would be revoked instantaneously. So how can you get on the stand and say he's not psychotic days after having him injected with an antipsychotic medication like that make sense?
It doesn't, and that makes you wonder how many other prisoners are being involuntarily injected or medicated with things they do not need or want in the name of control. So once you're in that prison system, are all rights just null and void? You're here behind these locked bars. We're going to wear our patches and guard you, and it's just going to be our show from here on out. And nobody's going to care because you're in prison. And remember, not everybody in prison is in there because they murdered innocent people, young women in the woods, or college students, or somebody's mom who went to the grocery store and never came home that night, whatever. They're not all in there for the same reasons. You got your low-level criminals, you got your mid-level criminals, you got your 10-year career criminals. I mean, all the different things. And yes, some crimes are way worse than others, but does that mean they don't have any rights once they enter those prison doors? Are we doing an eye for an eye here? If that's the case, we don't even need a prison. We don't need a trial. We can just string them all up in the middle of this town square and call it a day. All go home and eat supper like it used to be done. That's not the way we do it. So if we're going to so we have all this system in place. Yeah, okay, now they're found guilty. Now we don't care anymore again because they're going to prison. Well, what happens in 10 years, 15, when this conviction gets overturned? If that could happen. I mean, are we going to say, oh, well, he deserved all of that stuff in the meantime, though?
Right, exactly. If his conviction gets overturned in 10 or 15 years, then he will have spent 10 or 15 years more than necessary, or 17 years more than necessary in the state penitentiary.
Yeah.
So
Do these jurors even know we are out here on YouTube? That's the thing, people kept saying that about Koberger case, and talking bad about him is going to, taint the jury pool. Are they coming from all across the country? Is that how we pick jurors now? From all over the country, randos. Let me make sure none of y'all listen to YouTube. There's a very small audience that listens to YouTube. Not everybody's even aware we true crime on YouTube. You know what I mean? My family members could care less what I'm doing here on YouTube. They know what I'm doing, but it's not it's not a concern, a care, it's not their thing. So now we know Dr. Walla knew all about the Facebook groups and the true crime community, but not everybody does, and so because it gets talked about, and now don't think people over there in the Koberger case became a big deal. We don't talk about him because that's going to make him look bad in the public side. Well, I'm going to talk about him. We talked about Richard Allen for 2 years. Good or bad, it is what it is. We talk about all the defendants in these cases. Why should I single out that guy and not talk about him now? Because some people on the internet said we shouldn't, because that might taint the jury pool. I don't know if it will or not, but I'm going to do it. That's wrong to me to say you can't talk about them. I understand that the media shouldn't portray people in a way that they aren't, or try to dig up things to make them look a certain way when they aren't. All that plays a factor to potential jurors at some point. But I don't think they're just readily sitting out here waiting to go run to YouTube. I do think how many of these jurors will come out and start to learn about what's being said and what wasn't allowed in court, and wonder, did we make the right decision based on what we were presented? And then they can take that up with Judge Gull, right?
I don't know what the answer is.
I mean, we've seen cases where jurors come out and speak about it and are told, did you know this happened and this wasn't allowed into evidence? And they're like, what? If we had known that, it'd be different. I might have made a different decision. I mean, I've seen that happen with cases. And it makes you wonder, when you're trying to weigh what to allow into court, you got to do that based on case law that's already set and things of that nature. And the way, all these, there's many factors that go into it. You can't just say, oh, I don't like this particular piece of evidence, so we're not going to allow that in. There's a rhyme and reason behind how they do it. But should we be putting that many constraints on things? You know what I mean? Does it give the jury all they need to know to get somewhere? Or we just got the judge deciding what's allowed in and what's allowed, not allowed?
Well, no, absolutely. In this case, Judge Gull did determine what's allowed in and what the jury can see and what they can't. And that's a huge issue, because we know there is a ton of stuff out there that they didn't get to see. But I want to go over the final jury instructions just to see if this helps me to come to grips better with this jury result.
Yeah.
Because I'm struggling to come to terms with it, because I honestly thought when they were taking longer than we all thought they should, it was like 10-2 not guilty, 9-3 not guilty. Is the other way around. It was 10-2 guilty, 9-3 guilty, and they were convincing 2 or 3 holdouts that he was guilty versus not guilty. So final instructions, these were issued on November 7th after both sides finished their closing statements. It is the duty of the court to instruct you, the jury, in writing at this time concerning the matters of law which are necessary for your information in giving your verdicts. Verdicts plural. Since this is a criminal case, the Constitution of the state of Indiana makes you judges of both the law and the facts. That is a huge weight. That is a huge burden. And I love that. I love that about the juries. And even though this jury didn't agree with me, I respect the fact that they became the judges of the law and the facts. And I will respect their verdict. Though this means that you are to determine the law for yourself, it does not mean you have the right to make, repeal, disregard, or ignore the law as it exists. The instructions of the court are the best source, doesn't say the only source, but the instructions of the court are the best source as to the law applicable to this case. In deciding this case, you, the jury, must determine the facts from a consideration of all of the evidence and the law from these instructions and find your verdict accordingly. All of the law of this case has not been embodied in any one instruction. Therefore, in construing any single instruction, you should consider it with all other instructions given. Court's instruction 1. This is a criminal case brought by the state against Richard Allen. The case was commenced charging the defendant with count 1 felony murder, count 2 felony murder, count 3 murder a felony, count 4 murder a felony. So 2 counts of felony murder and 2 counts of Melanie murder a felony. Those informations omitting formal parts read as follows. Count 1. On or about February 13th, 2017, in the county of Carroll, the state of Indiana, Richard M. Allen did kill another human being, to wit, A.W., while committing or attempting to commit kidnapping, being contrary to the form of the statute in such case made and provided on or about February 13th, 2017. Count 2. In the county of Carroll, state of Indiana, Richard M. Allen did kill another human being, to wit, L.G., while committing or attempting to commit kidnapping, being contrary to the form of the statute in such case made and provided. Count 3. On or about February 13th, 2017, in the county of Carroll, state of Indiana, Richard M. Allen did knowingly or intentionally kill another human being, to wit, A.W., being contrary to the form of the statute. Count 4. On or about February 13, 2017, in the county of Carroll, state of Indiana, Richard M. Allen did knowingly or intentionally kill another human being, to wit, L.G., being contrary to the form of the statute in such case made and provided. Court's instruction number 2. The crime of murder is defined by law as follows. A person who kills another human being while committing or attempting to commit kidnapping commits felony murder. Before you may convict the defendant, the state must have proved each of the following beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant, Richard M. Allen, 1, killed Abby Williams, 3, 4, while committing or attempting to commit kidnapping. So this is important because they found him guilty of this. So we need to look at all of these elements, which they believe the state met.
And I don't know how they got when we were reading these the other day, going back over them when because we knew she had read them before the trial started to the jurors. So that they, to me, I don't see how they were able to prove each element. I mean, each element to me were the witnesses that placed him there, his gun, him on the bridge, his voice in the video. These are all the different elements in my mind that you need to prove to make him be the guy. And they failed to prove that to me, which again, I wasn't sitting there listening to all the evidence, unfortunately, but from what I saw, they just couldn't get me there. Not 100%. So I still want to know what they were debating about and which elements. I don't know, man. How did they get there 100%? Yeah, I mean, that's Bridge Guy. That's his voice. That's all the things. You know, was it the bullet testing that sealed the deal for them, that it had to be him because it had to be his bullet? If there was no bullet down there, would we even be sitting here? I don't see how they could get him there without that bullet. Shit, they wouldn't
Well,
even arrested him or got to it, you know. Well, I guess they would have done it because they would have found their little lost tip. But if he hadn't owned that particular type of gun, they could have never tied that bullet to him.
right.
So that
That's
is
what
the
they
only thing they have. And people want a physical piece of evidence at a crime scene. And I get that. We do need that. We need something physical to tie the person. You know, I had another creator. We were talking one day, and at this point, I need to see Brian Koberger on camera coming and going from that house to prove he did anything. Is that where we are in this country now? We need to catch all murders on camera to prove them. I don't want to think we need that much, because we're never going to get that much. But we also we do want some sort of physical evidence there, you know, and that is the only thing they had.
Well, they didn't just prove him there, but according to the jury and per court instruction number 2, they proved that he committed the act of kidnapping. So he committed murder while kidnapping Abby and Libby.
Yeah.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. And none of us, okay, not none of us, quite a few of us who have seen all of the evidence. And I want to see the enhanced video again, and I want to know how it was enhanced and how
Yeah.
it was shown to the jury being a quote unquote enhanced video. But I want to see that again for my own knowledge, because is that like enhanced accurate, or is that enhanced, oh, we brought up the bridge guy, he was 100 yards behind Abby, and then all of a sudden we enhanced it to make it look like he was 5 yards behind Abby.
And I think that would have been the really important piece to bring up in court. I want to know how you got this damn video. I'm sorry, I see this Snapchat photo of Abby standing on the bridge, and the whole entire bridge span is behind her. A minute or so later, you got a guy saying down the hill. Where is he behind Abby in the Snapchat video picture that we saw? He's not there. If he is, he's all the way at the north end, hadn't even got onto the bridge yet. Then all of a sudden you got enhanced video showing him walking. But like you said, how far, how good of your zoom was that? Did you pull that in? I need to know that in court. No, I don't want to wait till after court's over and done with and we go delve into that. I need to, as a defense attorney, I needed to know right then, because your video looks funny, first of all. Secondly, you're telling me that he was there, but I got this picture, I don't see him, and then all of a sudden you got the video and boom, look, he's right there. You need to prove that. Now, did the defense not fight that hard because they know that's Richard Allen? I didn't say, like I've said, I think it could be, but that don't mean he did anything. But how your zoomed in image makes him appear way closer than he was, apparently. And that is the take from everybody that saw that video in court that day, is their understanding as well. So was it never explained just how that video was enhanced? Because you're coming into court with some screenshots of a car that you saw on a video that you never bothered to get for 5 years. But you're telling me this guy on a bridge is the killer, but you got that video. Well, but then you enhanced it and did some work on it. Y'all don't make any sense with your, it just don't make any sense.
Well, no, and here's the thing about the jury coming back with guilty on all counts. That means they believe that he was involved in the kidnapping itself. Like he didn't just play a part, like he kidnapped the girls and then he murdered them.
Yes.
That's guilty on all counts. And so
yeah, he kidnapped them and took them down the hill
and across the flooded creek, across the flooded creek, up the slippery bank by himself into that floodplain on the other side of the creek.
And I still need to know in my mind where he was standing with those girls when this van came along and startled him and made him change his mind. Were you still on this side of the creek? Or were you in the middle of the creek? Or were you on the other side? I mean, no, make that make sense to me. Where were you standing when this van come along and startled you? Were you already across the private drive down the second hill at the bottom? Could that van even see you as it passed by? I could see it startling you if you're down there about to do some horrible stuff. Like, oh my God, there's a van. But where were you in relation to the van when it drove by and scared you? Where were those girls? Were they tied up? They couldn't run, couldn't scream. One of them sounded really, really brave. I think there might have been some screaming if they'd have seen that van go by as well. Yeah, there's our one shot at help. Um, so there's a lot of things that don't make sense still that maybe made more sense to the jurors that wasn't explained well enough by people who were there every day. Because honestly, all the talk we want to do can whatever, but it's that evidence, and that evidence matters, and how you got that evidence.
Well, and how the evidence was presented, and
Yeah,
how it was refuted or not refuted effectively.
yeah,
Because
it-
how it he said he fumbled with his gun. This is on the stand. Somebody who interrogated him, whether it was Mullins or Holman, I don't remember who interrogated him, said that he fumbled with his gun on the south end of the bridge, and that's how maybe the cartridge got there.
well, we all know that's wrong because it wasn't on the south end. The confession says he did something with his gun. So you got a military vet who knows how to operate guns, who has been out shooting before, now saying he did something with his gun. What do you mean? That sounds like an amateur doing something with their gun. Luckily for you, you didn't blow your hand off, but if you did something with your gun and that bullet came out on the south end, tell me how it got down the hill, across the drive, down a second hill, across the creek, up another hill, onto Ron Logan's property to land between the girls' feet if you fumbled with the gun way over there on the south end. I would have been sitting there all day with the court. I'd have been arguing with the judge all day long. I'd probably got contempt and everything else. But you're going to tell me how you make that make sense. You're about to send my client to prison for the rest of his life, and we're going to argue about this all damn day. So you give me an answer. Like, I don't understand how some of this is let go. Like, maybe there was some more compelling evidence that I'm not aware of that was shown in court, but I don't know.
The jury was convinced enough. Not only did he commit the murders, that he also kidnapped the girls by himself.
Yes.
Before he killed them.
Hi, Lisa. The van was driven by a man named Brad Weber. He testified in the trial. He's been somebody that's been looked at as part of the investigation himself. He lives right there at the end of the bridge. They've known about him for years. His gun was also taken the beginning of the investigation and kept for 6 months because they couldn't rule out his gun either until they found Rick's gun and made it fit. But yeah, that's who owned the van.
And there are people that say, and even Brad Weber himself, that say that he didn't drive that van every day to work and back. Some days,
yeah,
he drove his Subaru.
There's a lot of questions about Brad Weber that have been eating at a lot of people for a long time, long time, and it's odd to a lot of us who have followed this case and all the players, if you want to call them that. Kind of surprised at the fact that he was called in to testify, and now all of a sudden it's his van that startled this man. Like, well, damn, out of all these years, that's what did it. Happened to just turn out to be Brad Weber.
Well, it sounds like he might have been a little bit hard to get a hold of because Baldwin didn't present him with a subpoena until he actually came into court to testify for the state.
Yeah, if you're trying to be hard to get a hold of, you don't got to answer that door when they come knocking. It ain't hard. You can pretend you're not home all darn day. They can't bust that door down. They can get you when you walk out. So it's not hard to hide out when you don't want to be found out, especially in small town. And where people were saying they couldn't find Dr. Walla. I mean, how hard could it be, people? There's a whole country full of sleuths and detectives and private investigators, and we got a missing doctor that was to testify. I wouldn't even read the articles or the comments on that because I thought that was the silliest thing I'd heard. All of a sudden, she's missing. Well, that to me is a big deal if that was true. Obviously, she wasn't missing because she showed up to testify in court.
Oh, that was one of those social media rumors that like people love to get a hold of and run with, because when I was there on the 24th, that was the rumor of the morning. Like people
Oh
are
yeah.
like, the defense can't find Dr. Walla. The defense can't find Dr. Walla to serve a subpoena. They can't find her. Oh, lo and behold, she shows up and she testifies.
Yeah, I mean, make that make sense. They can't find her. Like, y'all contact the FBI on that one because, by God, something happened to her. She's around somewhere. We got another missing persons.
Well,
You know,
and she's a doctor. So does she just like give up her practice to go into hiding because of this case? No.
right? Yeah, there's a lot of rumors that get started with these cases, and just trying to stay out of the rumor mill or vetting things. I'll debunk a rumor in a heartbeat if I can for my own shit. I'll have theories I come up with, but I'm going to be debunking my own theory if I can. I'll be like, well, this makes sense. Oh, you know what? But add this element and it doesn't. So there's nothing wrong with theorizing if you're working that out. But if you just jump on it and you stick to it based on a rumor, that's dangerous. Crazy stuff happens with rumors. I don't know how long it will take. I don't know how long in Indiana with the appeals process. Is there a certain time limit they have to wait before they can file their first appeal? Can you do it pretty quickly? We know the appeals process though can take years, even if you get your appeal heard. Sometimes you don't even get it heard, and that's why a lot of the people who are wrongfully convicted end up staying in 30 years. Because it took that long. It could take 15 years to get your appeals process even heard, by the right people. That might need to be looked at as for some reform, but how do you pay attorneys who are going to come in and do your appeals if you're locked up in prison and can't even earn a dime? Are you going to get good attorneys to do the appellate process? Who pays them? There's all the damn money, the root of all evil. But do we have enough resources for people who are wrongfully convicted, and trying to fight their way out? It's got to be the hardest thing to do. Think about that. If you're actually an innocent person, that, and you were railroaded, whatever was done, you're convicted, and now you got to sit in prison and scream and hope that somebody will listen to you and believe you. And if you finally get that right one, all the work it's going to take to get all the information needed to get that, you know what I mean? Just to even make it stick. It's a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. And it's a shame because there's probably people sitting in prison that don't need to be there or deserve to be there, that don't have a way out. They don't have the means, the know-how, But then again, if you've got nothing to do but sit in prison, you're going to put everything you got into trying, I guess, especially if you know you are innocent.
Yeah, and there have actually been a lot of, I won't say a lot, there have been some prisoners that have filed their own motions,
Yeah.
the writs of habeas corpus, etc., that have been successful. And so
Yeah.
when you're in prison, that's actually a benefit to you. other than being in county jail, because county jail doesn't have law books and doesn't have a law library, but the state prisons usually do.
Oh, I was just seeing. I don't even remember where I read it the other day. Somebody was like, "Well, people, they were getting mad, and it like, well, if Koberger's found guilty, he's just going to go to prison and help write legal documents for all these other prisoners." So, I mean, because they end up doing it. They have all the law library there, like you said. A lot of them become attorneys while they're in prison.
Yeah, you can get
You
a law
know?
degree in prison. You can.
And so if you got inmates helping other inmates, that's all they got sometimes is each other. So how does it matter, who's in there helping them if they can get it done? Doesn't mean they're all going to get out. Of course, there's going to be the ones that are guilty as sin sitting there screaming, I'm not, just listen. But then that makes it harder for the ones who are innocent to get the help they need, It's like one of those crazy things, like, do we want to help prisoners, or we don't want to help prisoners, like make up, it shouldn't be that way. We have rights in this country, we have laws for a reason. We can't just stick them all in prison, shut the door and say, oh, well, nothing to see there because they're in prisons, let's let them have at it, all the bad. I mean, even if those aren't there for serious offenses, do they deserve to be treated so poorly once they're there? Low-level drug dealers, things like that, the weed, all these things, some breaking and enterings that they weren't hurting. It's wrong to steal people's stuff, but you know what I mean? There's different levels of criminals, and do they all deserve, if we're not going to say they deserve anything, we should just do away with prisons and hang them all out in the street then.
Well, if you haven't ever been convicted of a crime ever, should you spend 2 years in prison, state prison? I mean,
no, it's like when the ones are right, and when you get the people who are convicted in the counties and they're going to get time served, is Alan going to get 2 years time served off a life sentence?
No, because he
exactly.
No, yeah.
And there was just no reason to sit in prison for 2 straight years like that. Honestly, there really, really wasn't. You can't say it was for his own safekeeping.
Honestly, we don't
sense.
know. We don't know it. We don't know if it was deserved or not, because when they had the safekeeping hearing in front of Judge Diener, he wasn't represented by legal counsel. He had no legal counsel representation, and he himself wasn't there. So how do we know what was the right path to take? We don't. They just went, the state went, the county went with whatever they thought was best for themselves.
Yeah, because you're going to tell me you got 5 people. I don't know how big their county jail is, so I'm going to just make a little exaggeration here.
50.
You got 5 people in your county jail.
50.
What did you need to protect him from, those 50? Because you got 50 more over in prison that are willing to do it. So what are you keeping him safe from? They never answered that himself. From jumping off the sink and breaking his neck. I mean, that don't make any sense. We did it to protect him from other inmates going at him. Y'all don't have a little, build yourself a better jail. Add a room on for people like that.
Every county jail has solitary. Every county jail
does.
Yeah. So
they can quit it with we're too small town. Cass County offered to take him all along.
Cass County isn't any bigger than Carroll County. All right, I'm saying that off the cuff, but I guarantee you that Cass County, I'm going to Google it right now. What is the population of Cass County versus Carroll County? 38,000 in Cass County, Indiana. All right, let's go with Carroll County. 38,000 in Cass. Remember that. Carroll County, Indiana, population 20,000. So, okay, Cass County has twice the population, 40,000 versus 20,000. Seriously, they have a much better jail in Cass County? Well, maybe they do. Okay, we'll go send him there. Don't send him to Westville.
And like Bob was at all those hearings. It never made sense to continue that safekeeping order, especially when they came back and tried to get it removed again. And they're like, look at these conditions. And the judge is like, oh, I don't see anything wrong here. He's staying right where he's at, but let's move him further away. Let's get him out of that prison and put him in another one further from his family and his attorneys. Which, my God, y'all were, if you look at them, Koberger's accused of killing 4 people in their sleep. But he's in a suit and tie every time I see him at a hearing being housed at a county jail, safe and sound. So why was Richard Allen, is it different because they were young girls versus young adult women who lost their lives? What was the difference here that made it so unsafe for him that he couldn't be housed in a county jail? You just didn't have the facility. But then when one offered to do it, you still said no. So again, I'm going to say y'all caused this. They actually literally, it wasn't anybody on the internet that caused me to think about this case the way I do. Were there a lot of things presented that I consumed and took in? Yeah. But when I watched what the courts were doing every step of the way, that's what bothered me the most. That's what bothers me. The fact that you arrested him. I wanted the person, whoever did that, those girls, arrested and convicted as bad as anybody else did. The minute you do, you're going to send him straight to prison, and then all this other shady stuff was happening, and watching it unfold the way it did compared to all the other cases I've ever watched unfold, this was ridiculous. It never made sense to why they were doing it the way they were doing it. And then we finally get the trial, we're hearing bits and pieces of what's being said in the trial, and what we have heard, we were like, ugh, that's not 100%, this is all probable cause. And now here we are. It would just be different. I think we would all feel a little bit different if we could have seen it for ourselves. We still would probably feel the same exact way. If we were able to see everything and we got this verdict, we're probably still going to be sitting here having the same conversation, but because perception is different for everybody. The way I perceive one thing to be may not be the way you perceive it to be. That's why I like to talk to everybody who was in there and get their particular take on it and see what was everybody's similar, you know what I mean? Or were they just vastly different?
Yeah, I think we're vastly different, I think, but based on the fact that we all have already come to our conclusions in this case. Like, we have the people that have concluded that he's guilty, and we have there's 3 conclusions that have been arrived to before today. He's guilty, he's factually not guilty, or he's legally not guilty. And I'm of the third one. I don't think the state proved their case, but the jury disagrees. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think. It does not matter a lick what I think right now.
And I agree with that third when they're I've always even said that there is, like, even, and Bob said it again this morning when he was talking on the live with lawyer, is there a chance he could have done it? Yeah. But where's the proof? I just don't. And if you look at what they do have laid out, all they had was that bullet. You can put him there all day long. We already knew he was there. That was never an issue. He never had a different alibi other than I was there. Sketchy witness statements that never proved to be anybody because we had these different sketches out for years that weren't allowed in court. That's like, and you got his car over there on the Hoosier Harvester store camera. Other than that, you have nothing other than that bullet because none of that DNA was his. And that's rare. Even like the Koberger case, if that guy did it, people are like, well, how could he leave a speck of, that's it, a speck of DNA. That's all it took. And if you are so good at what you do, you think you got it all, but you missed something. That's if you're going by, this guy could be guilty and that's his DNA on that sheath. Apparently it is his DNA. It's very rare and hard not to leave DNA this day and age, no matter how hard you try. So there's DNA out there at the scene, but none of it's Rick Allen's. He didn't accidentally cut a finger in the middle of all this chaos going down out there, getting startled, getting scared. Now I'm just going to do this and this, and I'm walking out of here.
Not just getting startled and getting scared, but slashing
Right.
the throats multiple times. And one was more than the other. I won't get into it because it's really gruesome. But going to that much violent physical act against another human being, most times in a true crime case, which we've all been following Forensic Files and all those other shows for years, you're going to have a hard time committing those kinds of violent acts with a sharp bladed instrument without inflicting some kind of damage on yourself and leaving some kind of DNA at the scene.
Yeah. A loose hair could fall. If you got two victims, one didn't scratch at you. I mean, not saying they got a scratch in, but a lot of times that is, I know they bagged their hands. That's one of the things you do these days during a crime scene investigation. They did it in Idaho. You bag their hands for a reason, because you got to get under those nails and get those clippings and anything that you can get. You don't take the sticks off the bodies, toss them aside and say, you know what, we'll come back and get them in a couple weeks if we think we need them. Was there spit on one of those sticks that didn't land on the body, that landed on a stick instead?
Right.
Because dumbass doesn't know what he was doing. I'm sorry, y'all. I do cuss. Sorry.
I don't ever. You'll never.
That is so not true. I'm just gonna put that out there right now. He's way better at containing himself than I am. Let's say it that way.
I've never said a 4-letter word in my life.
I've seen the stuff you say.
This case will take me to swearing faster than any other case that I've followed.
Oh my gosh. I'll be swearing in my bed in the middle of the night just because I can't sleep and I'm reading something. I'm like, that's not true. Now, why are you saying it like that? You know that's shady to say it like that. I say all kind of stuff.
Right. I have said it on both sides. I have said it on both sides of the equation, which is why I give respect to this jury, because I have sworn at statements that people have made that Richard Allen is absolutely guilty, and I have probably said a few swear words at people who have made arguments that Richard Allen is absolutely not guilty, because we didn't have proof of that, which is why we left it to this jury, and why it's so tough to take today.
It is. And if he did do this, shame on the state for allowing him to walk and live freely among them for 5 solid years. And shame on you for failing to make sure you had all the evidence you needed in the beginning. Because Doug Carter's all out there living large. Oh, wait till you know what we know. All this stuff. What did you know? Other than you had a bullet that you were hoping to one day match to a gun. What else did you have, sir, besides your enhanced video that y'all put out there over and over and over, hoping it would, stir a memory, startle someone, get somebody thinking, I think I do know that guy. And then you got Miss Shank, Miss Tip Finder. So think about this. Small town, everybody knows everybody, or if you don't know everybody, you know of them. How many tips were called in on people who lived in the community that people like her saw before anybody else saw? And were they ever tipped off that there's a tip coming in on you? I mean, I can go a million places in this case. I got a lot of problems with how they discovered things and rediscovered and lost things, all these things. You've lost stuff that didn't matter, and then all of a sudden you found stuff later that did matter. Y'all are a mess over there. You need to get it together. because you made a mess of this case, and now you have this guy convicted that you pretty much just let wander around the town for all those years until you found your little tip to put together with all that other stuff you had for 5 years. No, you didn't have nothing. And I want to hear him come out and say that. Like, I want to hold him to the fire. Get out here, Doug Carter. Can we get an interview? If we play nice, we will. Sorry, Mr. Carter. Let me flip the switch here. I'd love to get an interview.
He would make a really, really great interview.
Oh, he'll magic hands me and hope I go down the portal. Well, I'm taking you with me, dude. I'm taking you with me. We got some work to do. Energetic work to do, Carter.
He's like, Salty will look like 2 different sketches, but we're going to make her disappear into the portal.
Lord, I can't with him.
We have nothing to do right now but make fun of this, because how else do we deal with our emotions?
Right. I mean, what do you do with it now that it's so that this part is over, and except want more answers that we're probably never ever going to get? Is anybody ever going to sit down and put Doug Carter on an interview and ask him those questions? Will they have to ask his questions beforehand so he can approve them? And I'm not going to answer this and that. Just go retire already. You're not doing anything over there in the Florida fire investigation that we can see. You didn't do a whole lot here, except come out and tell people that these sketches are going to meld together, and then, oops, they're not even allowed in court. Nope, never mind. They're not melding into anything.
Well, don't forget, he also told us that we would someday know the full story about these things that he can't tell us now.
That's what I'm waiting on. I'm waiting on his full story. And the full story is we had nothing for 5 years until Kathy found the tip that somebody threw in a box and we shoved in the corner. But we're working real hard. We're working real hard, y'all, for 5 years without the FBI.
That's my biggest problem with this, is that from like day 5 to like day 5,000, they were always waiting on a tip to break the case, to break the case for them. They weren't doing forensics. They weren't doing forensic investigation. They weren't doing forensic analysis. They barely, according to the trooper Cecil, were doing phone forensics. Barely, because he got surprised on the stand and he had to go Google on his phone on break 7.5 years after the fact. He's Googling on his phone how to deal with this forensic evidence. So
I don't know, but they probably could have used that Cy dude over here that he's going to be testifying in Idaho. He already testified one time. He's going to be the one to go up against the FBI people he used to work with. I want to see what Cy got to say about your little phone data stuff, because this would not even come close to flying in the Koberger case. Ann Taylor would rip this stuff apart. Is she a better attorney than what Delphi had? What Rick Allen had? I don't know. At this point, I got questions, and I hate to question them. It's this far into the game now that it's over, but I had questions last week when I saw that I felt like there was certain evidence they didn't attack enough as far as how you got there and where'd you get it and make your determinations, because there's not a whole lot of evidence. There's literally just some circumstantial. He's there, he's wearing this, his car is on this camera, and that's his bullet out there. That's all they had, was this damn bullet. And we got to hear from one expert basically on how that was proven to be his bullet. And although it took her several tries and different methods to get there, she finally got there. Then we got the box cutter guy come in, and a few months later, you know what? I was standing in my garage years after I did them autopsies and all off. Well, now that box cutter could have made those marks I saw that day. Could have. Doesn't mean they did. And you failed to do any testing to try to prove that they could have, so Is that like going back to the jury instructions in Indiana? Is like half-ass is going to be good enough?
Well, going back to the Walla connection, and there's more than a Walla connection, there's a Walla nexus.
Mm,
So, did she hear from social media, which she was checking into before she actually treated her patient at the Westville Correctional Facility? She had been checking into social media. Did she hear about a white van? And did that white van maybe mysteriously make its way into her conversations with Richard Allen while
yeah.
she is treating him? We don't know. We won't know. We will never know, because obviously she'll never admit it. And Rick Allen is never going to be able to say, oh, hey, yeah, she suggested it to me, and for it to be believable to anybody. Because
Well, it feels like that's what happened. Even when they began to talk about, he found God, and then it was talked about in the trial where his wife and mother were talking to him about God, and Kathy gave him a Bible. His mother was talking to him on the phone about her experience. I felt like that was too convenient for prosecutors. Oh, look, he found God. Now he's confessing. Maybe he actually did find God. Maybe his family was trying to get him to lean on faith to give him some hope, and they took that and ran with it as well. I could have went down that. I went down that road a week ago. That's where I got with that. Just like when we realized while they're interrogating Rick Allen Holman, very early on, we know that's you on camera. We already got experts to say it is. They're over here doing Kathy the same way in this other room. Rick's got no idea they're over there doing that to his wife at that point in time. He's not even sure where she's at. She's there, but he's being interrogated. And the whole time she's being interrogated, being told, we know this, we know that, we already have all this proof. Trying at that point to get her to go back in the room and say, honey, why did you do it? Let's put some doubt in her mind now. You don't ever know who you're sleeping with, people. Apparently, there's a lot of women, and I'm going to say it like that because a lot of these people are men that come out later were lifelong serial killers, and their wife never knew. I think I would be suspicious. Honey, you wasn't home last night. You're acting a little odd today. There's got to be something in there somewhere that gives you some indication your spouse, your partner, ain't quite right in the head. Do you just ignore it? I mean, are you like Kathy? You've been living a normal life for all these years with this man. Okay, a little depression here, a little anxiety. What the hell? This is America. I think everybody in this country has been told they got some anxiety and depression these days. Everybody, including me. That doesn't make everybody a serial killer or gonna look for a crime opportunity out on the day on a hike. I mean, none of that. Just none of it made sense with this case and the way they tried to spin it all. It's very icky.
well, it's a very representational case of how our society is and has been,
Yeah.
because Rick Allen is about my age, and he was in the military, and I know how my dad is, and I know how my grandfather was, and you don't talk about emotional issues. You don't
Oh
talk
no.
you
Yeah.
don't talk about anxiety. You don't talk about depression. You just you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you carry on.
Yes. And it's
So,
way harder for men to even have that conversation than it is for women. And people, for years in this country, you're a hysterical woman. You have hysteria if you lost your shit for a minute. If you got mad at your man for doing weirdo stuff, like not coming home and drinking, and you lost it on him, you're a hysterical woman. And I even had doctors tell me that one time when I had to go to the ER. I kept having this pain in my stomach, and then they were like, oh, it's just an ovarian cyst. It'll rupture. You'll be fine. Okay. And the doctor stood there and looked at me and told me that. He's like, well, years ago in this country, if it was a woman and she had an issue, it was just the crazy woman syndrome. All right, so what are you telling me right now, mister? Because you're a man and I'm in a lot of pain and you're over here laughing about it. almost calling me a hysterical woman. I'm about to show you how hysterical a woman can really get. You know, and people, anxiety and depression are something a lot of people do battle, and it's not something that you shouldn't be able to talk about. But you're right. There's a lot of times you don't talk about it, especially with the men. You know, it doesn't make you a crazy person who's going to run out and do a lot of crazy, horrible things. You got to, there's nothing in his past that even indicated he may have these types of tendencies or thoughts, you know, that we've seen anywhere. And a lot of times with these cases, you do end up seeing that in their past. Things come out, but with this one, you didn't see any of that ever.
No, but here's something that the jury did get to see that we didn't get to see that may have impacted them and their evaluation of him and his propensity for quote unquote evil. And that is, on those videos, supposedly he was doing self-gratification things, and he was doing like really wacky, out of mind, out of body type experience things
I wonder,
to himself. So if
yeah,
so if the jury saw that, did they not draw the connection? Did they not go dot to dot? Okay, if he was able to do this on handheld camera in prison, could not he have done something equally as wacky in real life on February 13th, 2017?
definitely. And did they conclude that all that he was doing in the prison was fake? The crazy, the acting crazy.
Right.
I can get away with you know, criminal insanity here versus if it comes down to that. Did they believe that was the case, you know?
Did they believe that it was evil, and it was either it was intentional or it was not intentional? And if it was intentional, I'm creating a fake circumstance. Okay, I think you're guilty. Or if it was unintentional, maybe you were whacked out that day on February 13th, 2017, like you were there in prison. Maybe you were whacked out and you did something that you normally wouldn't do on February 13th, 2017. So the jury can look at that at both ways. And
Yeah,
honestly, both of them are bad for Rick Allen at that point.
I agree. I do agree.
I don't know how his attorneys overcome that.
I don't either, because you can look at that both ways. Because we heard that there were times that those videos were played that the jurors would look over at Rick Allen. And I don't know if they were trying to gauge him, determine, okay, is that really you? You know, if this is real or not. Could they believe that he was faking all of that in prison? Yeah, but you know what set him off that day particularly? Like, I'm just going to go out to the trails, and he had no idea those girls were going to be out there. It's just, let me go for a walk, and if the opportunity presents itself, I'm taking it. Because I can't fight this urge anymore. Which a lot of times, like a sociopath, psychopath, they get those urges. But serial killers can go dormant for a couple of years without killing, but they always go back to it. We saw it with BTK. He took a couple of years off here and there. Other serial killers have done that, but there's nothing in Rick Allen's past that even shows, did he hide it all really well from Kathy? Was he into child porn? But there's nothing on any of the devices. Like over in Stefan Stern's case here in Florida, it's all over his phone, what he liked and what he was doing. If Rick Allen wasn't ever consuming that type of content, then he wasn't. But if he was, there would be some kind of footprint. Like even Keegan Kline, they knew he was the catfish guy in the basement. The proof was on Libby's phone, and they, were able to find him. But there's nothing that they even were able to come out with and say that Rick Allen was doing that sort of thing. On, the computer search from his home. We saw the Google searches he allegedly did. but we didn't see any indication of child pornography, being obsessed with teenage girl. You know, none of that. None of that normal stuff you would see was there. So either he was really good at hiding that part of his life, or something.
Or
If I live with a man, I'm sorry, you're not getting away with all that shit with me. It's not gonna fly. I'm looking at you. You're gonna be looking at me. I'm looking at you. Don't be so naive and not know what your man or your woman or whoever's up to. Just don't. It might surprise you and be a serial killer.
hey Dizzy, hey Tiff. Thanks for dropping in. Appreciate it. We are just kind of like trying to work through our feelings after this verdict came in, because we have such conflicted feelings that it's hard to put it into words, but we're working through it. We are working through it.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, guys. Hey, DB, can you believe this verdict, man? I'm looking at chat too, getting caught up. I'm glad everybody came in. Yeah. What do we do with it now, right, Tiff? Like, good Lord.
All right. So I want to keep going through the jury instructions because I want to know what love is. Oh, sorry.
No. It's like anti-love.
So they didn't just find on murder or felony murder, they found on both, which means that they found him guilty of kidnapping in the process of murder. So
Wouldn't it be the other way around? Why every time I go to Twitter to look at somebody will have a feed up of outside the court. This is the second one in a row I've seen. What the hell's murder shit doing? Like, they're running. Like, I gotta save this one too. Like, I don't know what they're doing, but I think they're running too. Like, they got an exclusive. Sorry, I got sidetracked watching these people.
oh, did they find a juror? Did murder?
They may have. They're
murder
standing here. This one was like posted an hour ago. They're standing here. Some guy runs up to them and he says something, and boy, they take off running the other direction away from the crowd.
Interesting.
The person wrote, "This doesn't look sketchy at all. They did not make the cut getting into the courtroom through the front door." Oh, so they didn't make it in during the verdict read?
Oh.
Aha.
But they had their folding chairs set up
Yep.
there on the sidewalk.
Then this kid, this is like a young guy, he runs out and he taps old Kevin on the shoulder here. And then he grabs his girl and they're gone. Well, she's running, buddy. She's gone.
Yep, Anya's gone.
Y'all watch out. Get out of the way. Lord. I'm going to laugh at these two because these two got on my last damn nerve during all of this. They just did. I'm sorry. They shouldn't have come out with their little arrogant behavior, and maybe I wouldn't feel the way I do about them, but
I will reserve judgment because when I was standing in line,
she was nice to you.
She was very nice to me, and she looked at my picture of Charlie, my BFF, and she was sympathetic that I lost him over the Rainbow Bridge. So,
well, get her on for an interview. I got questions. I'll be nice. I can be nice.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you for 1 second.
Oh, I can be nice and still ask hard questions. I honestly can. I've been trying to give somebody else a shot at that in this true crime community, but she will not bite. So maybe I should work on some things and make myself a little nicer.
We all need that. We all need that. Preach it.
So go ahead, but you can finish with the jury instructions. Yes. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked with these two.
Court instructions number 5. The crime of murder is defined by law as follows. Any person who knowingly or intentionally kills another human being commits murder, a felony. knowingly or intentionally. It doesn't have to be both. It can be I knowingly took your life or I intentionally took your life. It's kind of an interesting distinction. But anyway, before you may convict the defendant, the state must have proved each of the following. Each of the following. So all of these elements must have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant, Richard M. Allen, 1. 2, knowingly or intentionally. 3, killed 4, Liberty German. If the state failed to prove each of these elements beyond a reasonable doubt, you must find the defendant not guilty. If the state did not prove each of these elements beyond a reasonable doubt, you may find the defendant guilty of count 4, murder, a felony. Court instruction 6, intentionally or knowingly, is defined by statute as follows. So the jury is going to find out what element of this is part 2 of instruction number 5, knowingly or intentionally. This is defined as a person engages in conduct intentionally if, when he engages in this conduct, it is his conscious objective to do so. Also, a person engages in conduct knowingly if, when he engages in this conduct, he is aware of a high probability that he is doing so. That's honestly, to me, that's mind-blowing. Like, knowingly, the definition of knowingly in Indiana. So we go up to page 5. It's knowingly or intentionally, part 2 of instruction number 5. Knowingly or intentionally, it can be either one. Intentionally, it is his conscious objective, or knowingly, if, when he engages in this conduct, he is aware of a high probability that he is doing so. So is that a high probability that Richard Allen knew that he was kidnapping and murdering them? That's what the jury found.
Well, it's going to be hard to go out and essay 1 or 2 victims without killing them, because they're going to go tell somebody the minute you're done. So some of this stuff to me is like common sense, people. Unless you know he was convinced I could go out there and harm these girls in this physical way, and they're never going to tell a soul about it, and they'll never be able to ID me. So probably his intention would have been to unalive them after the fact. But apparently kidnapping happened, then the murder happened. Not the murder, then the kidnapping. Like, y'all screwy. Screwy with your words and your word salad. And I don't see how they proved each of you might have. Okay, so if you take and you do each element, did you prove in their mind that was his gun, his bullet? But you can't prove everything else. Well, you can. You semi proved that was his car. Well, he said it was there. You semi proved he was there because he said he was there. Didn't prove he was bridge guy, but it is what it is. All you got's that damn bullet. And they, I guess, in their mind, they proved that element was true, so the rest had to be true. I mean, how do you convict if you didn't believe that was his bullet? You can't. Not in my opinion. You shouldn't.
So, court's instruction number 7. Direct evidence means evidence that directly proves a fact without an interference, and which in itself, if true, conclusively establishes a fact. Circumstantial evidence means evidence that proves a fact from which inference of the existence of another fact may be drawn. An inference is a deduction of a fact that may logically and reasonably be drawn from another fact or group of facts. It is not necessary that facts be proved by direct evidence. Both direct evidence and circumstantial evidence are acceptable as a means of proof. That's a good point. Both direct and circumstantial evidence are acceptable as a means of proof. Where proof of guilt is by circumstantial evidence only, it must be so conclusive in character and point, so surely and unerringly to the guilt of the accused, as to exclude every reasonable theory of innocence. Salty, are you with me?
I am.
Okay. So that is an interesting statement for the jury instruction. And I don't know that I've heard it in other states worded quite that way. So I want to read the last paragraph one more time. It is not necessary the facts be proved by direct evidence. Both direct evidence and circumstantial evidence are acceptable as a means of proof, where proof of guilt is by circumstantial evidence only. So can we agree that in this case, the proof of guilt is by circumstantial evidence only? Can we agree with that?
I do. And even their bullet testing, that was not proven to me that was his bullet, but I guess the jury sees that differently. I feel like every element was all circumstantial, including, now the bullet may not be able to be called circumstantial because it's a physical piece of evidence that was there, but you did not prove without a doubt it came from his gun. So again, I can only assume that the only reason that was their biggest piece of evidence, besides, bridge guy down the hill, that if they didn't have that bullet, Richard Allen wouldn't be convicted right now. Because you convict on a probable cause on a shady enhanced video. Now I'm gonna want to go back in all the cases you prosecuted and see how many times y'all enhanced videos. That's a problem. Enhanced anything, AI anything is a problem in our world, in our country. I don't like the AI stuff. I'm not willing to accept it, because the minute I accept it, then I got to accept it across the board in every aspect. And then it's all going to be okay. I don't need to go to school and learn how to read and write myself. I got an AI tool to do it for me. I don't need to make my own videos. I can get this fake one to do it. No, I don't want fake. I do not like fake. I don't like fake people. I don't like fake stuff, period. So I don't want your fake enhanced video. I want the real thing. And if it's not perfectly clear, then it's not perfectly clear. It is what it is. Invent better cameras. Try to get the public to buy better cameras. I don't know. We should be seeing, between the Koberger case and this case, your camera actually matters. Don't just go stick a cheap one on the outside of the door, because you may not get a clear face of the person that tries to steal your packages. You might get a grainy picture at best. It's all circumstantial, if you ask me. That is why Casey Anthony was found not guilty. It wasn't because people didn't believe she killed her daughter. They had no proof she killed her daughter. We had speculation, we had theories, we had a crazy smell in the car. We had a habitual liar as the defendant, a proven habitual liar. but they failed to prove she did anything to her child. There was no DNA to tie her to her daughter's death. None whatsoever. I don't care what anybody tells you about the DNA on the heart-shaped sticker. That heart-shaped sticker and where it was stuck came out in court, and it wasn't where the media told you it was over her mouth. It wasn't. So if you don't watch the cases yourself, you're taking the word from people. And if they're not willing to tell you the honest truth about it, you're not going to get the honest truth about what happened in that courtroom. Unless you go, I'd say go back and watch it for yourself. It's sickening to watch, but they didn't find her not guilty because they thought she was guilty. They had strict instructions in Florida for the jury, and they cannot convict on probable cause alone. If there's any reasonable is the big word, reasonable doubt, these attorneys weren't even allowed to bring in reasonable doubt. The reasonable doubt would have been the gun expert may not know what she's doing. That's your reasonable doubt with that piece of evidence. Reasonable doubt on the others would have been the timeline. What time did he get there and what time did he leave? As far as when his car was actually seen. They failed to prove that was his car even as well. Even with the Coburger case, I see Linda Lane footage. I see this sedan circling its prey over there, but I still don't know what kind of car that is. And I don't know who's in it. And 1,000 times of watching it, I still don't know. We have our best guesses. Be interesting to see what the experts say when they come out. Am I going to believe them? I don't know yet. I got to wait till they get on the stand and testify and let me hear what they got to say and how they concluded this stuff. That's what matters, and I don't know. I think this magic bullet was their smoking gun. And lo and behold, look, it happened to fit that gun. According to that one expert.
Well, when you go to reasonable doubt, let's go to the jury instructions, because this is what the jury should have been and probably was, but definitely should have been reviewing in their case review process for Richard Allen, where proof of guilt is by circumstantial evidence only. So they had to weigh whether or not that unspent round was circumstantial or was not circumstantial. That is literally the only potentially uncircumstantial piece of evidence in this whole case. So maybe they held it that way. Maybe that's why they came out with the verdict they did. But if it was circumstantial, because it definitely was controversial, it must be so conclusive in character and point, so surely and unerringly to the guilt of the accused, as to exclude every reasonable theory of innocence. Every reasonable theory of innocence. Every reasonable theory of innocence. That means third-party theories too, which they were never allowed to hear. So
yeah, and I can agree with that. USA Libertarian, the confessions probably, I don't know if they took those confessions seriously. I guess they may have did take them and for what they were. Did that help solidify the bullet testimony stuff? Like I said, maybe those were the two major things they were wrestling with the most: the confessions and the gun or the bullet. Because we can't help but wonder what got the jury there. What did they just, what were their biggest points of contention? And like Joe's reading about their instructions, dude, I don't know. I think it was all circumstantial except for that bullet.
well, and the fact that the judge did not allow the tool mark expert for the defense in that is huge.
Yeah, well, excuse me. There was really no reason for her to do that, other than she just didn't think he was qualified enough. I mean, is that her call to make who does? I mean, there's experts from all all different walks of evidence out there. There's firms that you go to hire your experts from and things like that. There's more than there's plenty of experts out there. I don't know why that one wasn't. I don't know if I'm the defense attorney and you tell me my one expert can't come, am I going to try to find another one that you do approve of, or do I just let that go? You know what I mean?
Well, they have a limited budget. Like they can't just
Yeah.
keep hiring expert after expert after expert.
Well, then that's another point to take up with the judge. Okay, well, first I had to fight to get money out of you. Then I get a little bit. Then you're going to tell me, well, I don't like how you spent it. Now you can't have more, and you still can't bring. It's like, lady, how many times can you say no and get away with it? That's where we should be asking at this point. How does Gull continue to get away with it? And if there's a good reason, because y'all allow that to happen, then we need to make a change to make sure that doesn't happen. Maybe another judge should have called her and said, hey, can we have dinner? What are you doing here, lady? What's going on, girl? Let me give you some advice. Talk. I don't know if that's even ethical to do, but I would do it. I'm like, Judge Gull, come on, what are you doing over there? Or she might be just like, she might say, to hell with you, don't talk to me. But there's got to be something, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't start to come out once now this is over, this part of it. If there's anything that she did wrong in the process, it's going to come out and people will go after her for that. I have a hard time thinking they won't, especially if you're all about justice and you're an attorney and you're in that system and you fight this system. You got a real problem right now with her and some of the actions that she was able to take. And will there be any ramifications for the stuff that she was doing? Is there any legal thing, avenue that could be explored with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. But she's been to the Supreme Court and she has withstood the scrutiny of the Supreme Court. So
yeah, I mean, I got where they were coming from, though, having to go back to the lower court and start there. But then the problem became the judge you had to go to was the actual judge you're trying to get rid of. That should have been heard by a different judge and let another judge decide. Well, is she being shady here? Is she being ridiculous? Yeah, maybe you are, ma'am. Or that they could come out and say, no, everything she's doing is on the up and up by the law. I would have accepted that. But for her to be the one to make that decision, to me, is a little. And if you got the right to recuse yourself because, it's a bloodthirst out there, then you also got the right to recuse yourself when you may be in over your head or you're whatever. But I guess legally, from a legal standpoint in Indiana, everything she did was on the up and up. Nothing they can do about any of it. So if that's the case, Indiana needs to be questioning what they're doing. The citizens need to question it.
nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing to see here.
I'm telling you, pushback sometimes is all it takes in the right amount. Because for years in Florida, we had a lot of issues with our Florida Department of Law Enforcement, our sheriff's departments, and Child Protective Services. And when the public got an earful of what was really happening and the pushback came, it came hard. We weren't playing with the state of Florida. Y'all let a little girl disappear under your watch for 2 solid years and no one knew about it. No one knew where she went. No one knew what happened to her. And then we realized y'all didn't even know where this child was for 2 years and she was in your custody. And now she's dead. That was a huge problem for the state of Florida. And a lot of things had to change, and it's changed now. And after Gannon Stock was murdered and dropped off a bridge not far from my house, and his autopsies photos were released all over the internet, or she wants you to go to her little Patreon and pay to see them. Now there's a Florida law that says you can't do that anymore. You can't have those autopsy photos. Why do you even need them? You're going to hear about it in court. So we're going to protect these kids now and put this new law. So there's a reason you push back. It's not just to get out there and show your butt and we're going to do this and we're going to hold up some signs. It's to make change. It's not to get out there and call attention, get attention to it, yes. But if we're not pushing for the actual change to happen, it's never going to change. We can get out here and scream and yell about a lot of things, but are we going to do anything about it? I don't know what y'all can do about it in Indiana if everything Judge Gull is deemed correct by the law standard there, then there's something needs to be changed there.
Absolutely. I'm just sharing Gannon's law.
Yes. I rode past his memorial the other day. I didn't stop because there was a lot of traffic and I had to be somewhere, but just every time I have to ride, I don't like not like I'm ashamed to have to ride past it, but every time I do ride past it, I think about Letitia and how I wished I'd been crossing that bridge at the same time she was parked over there dropping that child off the side of that bridge. Because she would have been dropped right off the side of that bridge right along with him. Because I already knew he was missing. I already knew it. I was watching TV that day as well, and I stopped to pay attention and listen to what they were saying. Imagine my surprise when I find out we have a little boy just turns up under the bridge in a suitcase. We're like, what? And then when it came out it was Gannon, all I could think was, how in the world? I've seen I've seen stepmom on TV talking about his disappearance. How did that child get from Colorado here under my bridge? And now we know. But these kids, they deserve to have the right people in prison for what they do to them.
Right. Which makes us so much more frustrated with this with this jury's ruling, because I mean 90% of the people that were out and were undecided or kind of decided are not in agreement with the jury's decision, but we have to respect it.
Yeah, I don't blame the jury. I don't. They're evaluating what was presented. Now, do I think they might have misinterpreted some of it? Yeah, but I wasn't there to hear it and see it. I don't know. Even like Bob was explaining, he was there and he still didn't know, for sure how they would vote. I don't even know if he knows how he would vote, because it's I don't think anything was proven either way.
Right. So, but we know what we're supposed to vote if the proof isn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt. We all know how it's supposed to go.
Yeah. Well, if they had been presented a lot more, and how it's easier for us to sit here and say, well, they didn't have all the information. But they had all the information about the one guy charged. They didn't get to hear the information about the other guys that were looked into, the multiple other people that were looked into outside of the Odinism people. I mean, my God, y'all were looking to everybody in the country that could possibly do something like this. We know for a fact you were. You wanted Paul Etter's DNA. Why were y'all wanting all these guys' DNA? Why? Because you got some male DNA there, and it's not Richard Allen, so you absolutely know you got another party involved, but you won't come out and say it. And why was Rick Allen confessing 61 times, but never once said, well, this guy was with me? Why would you be afraid to say that if you're that guy? So it's weird that you got this guy coming out. I'm the only one that did it, and I did it for these reasons, and this was my intention. But why, if that's so easy to prove, And I don't understand why they were wanting all this DNA from all these other players before Richard Allen's arrest. Because they literally went out and got DNA from all the other people. But then we hear they got some DNA they haven't tested yet. What do y'all... Then why were you getting all these other guys' DNA? Because you got something, obviously. Or you're blowing smoke up everybody's butt. You just wanted their DNA to make it look good. I mean, I don't know. But you don't get to come out and say, well, I want Paul Etter's DNA, and I want Chadwell's DNA, and I need Westfall's DNA, and all these people's DNA. Apparently, y'all didn't put a whole lot of stock in your DNA. You didn't test certain parts, and you're saving certain parts. Like, y'all bad investigators. You need to go back to school.
I don't think going back to school is going to help. I don't think so.
No, if I was in Indiana and I was some kind of attorney, I'd be like, I'm gonna watch. I need to investigate this whole department and their ability to investigate. Let's make some noise here. You know, I mean, it doesn't make any sense for this whole DNA part. The whole DNA part to me does not make sense. Especially when there's been so much debate about, do they have DNA in Delphi? Do they not? Well, I think they do. I've heard, you know, Becky even says that. Well, I've heard Tobe say we got DNA. Yeah, apparently you got a partial thumbprint. Where was this thumbprint? And does it not match Richard Allen either? Does it match any of your other guys? Did it match Weber? Did we take his fingerprints? Just his gun? Like, I need to know more about this investigation. The hard facts of it, you know.
Apparently they didn't, and that's why they fired the FBI. They're like, we don't need to know more facts. We don't need to investigate more. We're good.
Yeah, y'all are going to find out we're not very good at our job, and we don't need that. I mean, it's crazy that, in a way, it is crazy the jury did reach this decision, especially after seeing how, I guess they don't know that this was a really poor investigation. You know, if they don't see what we see or know what we know and things like that. Somebody coming in my front door. Better be one of my kids. Hold on.
If not, you better have that 40 caliber Sig Sauer ready.
I got my taser. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna tase you first. Yeah, it's one of the kids. No, I'm gonna sit right here in my room and let you get all the way to me. Surprise, surprise. What you got pulled up there? News piece?
Yeah.
So that they had reached a verdict. Now, there's going to be a little bit of lag time from when we learn that verdict was in to when we learn what the verdict actually is, because they have to get Richard Allen back into the courthouse. He's being held at a jail about half an hour away from here, so they need to bring him back into the courthouse for the reading of this verdict. And of course, the families of Abby and Libby, the attorneys for both sides, and some members of the public all making their way here to the courthouse. Terry, I can tell you there have been a lot of people who live in this area or the surrounding area who have come out to the courthouse. They want to be here outside this building when that verdict is announced and when they learn what Richard Allen's fate will be. Terry?
You know, Alex, thank you. This case has gained national attention. It's been going on a long time. That's 2017 that those girls were killed. How has the community been impacted by this? How are they responding to this trial?
Yeah, it's really hard to put into words how much this has impacted this community, Terry. We're talking about a smaller town in a rural area. Everyone knows everyone or knows a lot of people. When the girls vanished, There were volunteers from all across the area who came out and tried to help find them. So people are invested in this. They have emotion. If you walk down Main Street, just about every business has a sign that says, you know, Abby and Libby, justice for Abby and Libby. Everyone here has been impacted by the emotion of the loss of these two girls. So it's not a stretch to say that everyone in this town is going to be paying attention to see what this decision is that the jury came up with. Now, Terry, as you know, usually when the jury takes longer to reach a decision, in the past, it's tends to favor the defense. We shall see in this case if that's what happened.
All right, Alex Perez, I know you'll be there for us when the verdict does come down. Thank you for that report, and we will have that verdict when it is announced.
You are at the heart.
Yeah, so that's an interesting perspective
Yeah.
because he said when it's a little longer, usually there's the defense, and that's not the way it went down today.
Usually, and that makes me, you know, I think they must have really had a lot of, you know, there was like one or two pieces of evidence they really struggled with versus, you know, it's all just cut and dry and we're all going to get in here and vote and go home. Because they really struggled with something in there. And I wonder what that particular thing was. That's important to me. I don't know if it was just the damn bullet. Was it just the confessions? It's one of those are like those two strongest things. Because being bridge guy, he was there. We all know that. His car being seen, big deal. He was there. It should have been seen. It's the confessions and it's the bullet.
Yeah,
I believe the circumstances under the bullet were way too sketchy. I mean, under those confessions were way too sketchy to believe could have all been legitimate stuff.
yeah. If I'm bridge guy and I'm bad guy, like if I'm the one who's on video and I'm the one who does the deed, I'm worried about that resonating with the jury. Like they were shown a video of bridge guy and they were shown interrogation video of Rick Allen admitting that those clothes that he wore were very similar to what bridge guy wore. So
Yeah.
that may have been a problem for them to overcome.
Well, and I think that does matter when we've always known what bridge guy was wearing. We see it. And we've always heard what Rick Allen described he was wearing that day. And it's damn near the same thing. That's why I've never had a problem with him being the bridge guy. But I'm not convinced bridge guy did anything other than be on the bridge when he said he was. And did this girl just happen to get him in a video because he happened to be there? Then that goes back to the enhanced video. How enhanced was it? How fast did this guy get down that bridge up on these girls? That's what you want me to believe. That at 2:07, we see a Snapchat photo and there's nobody behind Abby as far as the eye could see. But then all of a sudden there he is up on them saying, guys, down the hill.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get to that being the guy? And like Bob and them said, and you've said, and other people have said, bridge guy's mouth doesn't move. How can you tell in that weird video they got a bridge guy? You can barely see his mouth. And when you do see his face, it's all pixelated and, you know, the things that we see. How can you tell? I mean, I guess if you're sitting in the courtroom on a big TV, you might be able to tell better. But from what I see in the little loop, I don't see the mouth moving either, but hell, I can't really even see his mouth, you know? But even, you know, that's a point they kept saying is you don't see the bridge guy mouth move. And I think the defense attorney brought that up as well. I guess still in their mind, they could make it fit. I have an issue with all that. If I was that juror, I'd still be sitting there going, no, y'all can't convince me. God, I know we want to go home and all, but gosh, how long do you let that go, right? Before you go to the judge and say, we can't come to a conclusion.
Okay, so then at what point do you take Tony Liggett's testimony where he testified under oath on the stand on August 24th that it's quote unquote not humanly possible that somebody else's voice was heard saying down the hill except for bridge guy. He testified to that under oath. He said it's quote unquote not humanly possible. So how do you fight that?
You tell him you're an idiot, sir. What do you mean humanly possible? You don't, that makes no sense because there's two people already on the end of the bridge standing there with the girls. And if the girls didn't want their mommy to know they were meeting somebody out in those woods they probably shouldn't have been meeting, they're not going to put them on their video. They're about to Snapchat to all their friends. But yet he's standing right there beside her. That's my take on it. I'm just being blank. I'm just being brutally honest right now. If that wasn't Bridge Guy's voice, it's some other person's voice, obviously. And from the people I've talked to that were in the courtroom, including you, when you hear the girls say there's no path, were they yelling? Were they scared? Were they crying? Were they, hey, God, there's no path? I mean, that makes a difference. And so he can just stop it with his expert analogies there because he don't hold water with me. He may hold water with the jurors, I guess, but with me, he doesn't, you know? How do you mean? Well, humanly possible. Is it humanly possible to run down that bridge in 2 seconds without tripping and falling and rolling off the side? If you're a bridge guy and you got to get down there in a real hurry to get them girls down that bridge, down that hill.
That's a really good point.
Like, I'm telling you, I'd still be in that courtroom. I'd be like, no, I do not rest. I got more to say. Can I take a break? I'll come back with more in just a minute.
I got more juror questions.
Yeah, I'm not done with my juror questions. Give me a minute, I'll think of some more. Yeah, we got Elvis, high unknown. We got Elvis Fields over there confessing, talking about spitting and all these things. Reading that last comment, USA Libertarian. My gosh. There's just too many unanswered questions. This was not a cut and dry case, and I just got a lot of questions for those jurors now. So I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying I need you to help me understand how you got there. Yeah.
There are a lot of ways to get there now. And I think one of the things that is the most frustrating is how did they get there and how did they not get there where we got there?
Yeah. Is it because we've had more time to sit with this case and all of the other things that we know about it? And we've all read the Frank's memo and things like that, that the jury doesn't have any clue about. They're not supposed to anyway. At this point, I'd have to think they probably didn't know anything about it. Like they didn't come in and lie and say they didn't know when they did. Are they going to start finding out? Yeah, probably so. And that's when I think the problems will come out. Will the jury say, well, I wish we had known? Or, get mad and write the judge a letter and say, well, why did you not let this in? It would have been important in our decision process. I don't know. Are they going to find out the experts weren't allowed for the defense the way they were for the prosecution? There's a lot of things they're going to find out they didn't know. And I think a lot of times that may help. You know what I mean? If they come out and think about it, you just put someone's life on the line. You had all their decision making was in your hands. If you feel like you weren't giving all the information you needed to make the right decision, would you be a little mad about that? I would be.
There are a lot of things in this case that we would all be mad about. There were a lot of things.
Yeah, and if I'm sitting on that jury and I come out and I start finding out some of these things, I'm going to be like, whoa. I mean, I do understand why they didn't if you're just going to be honest about it for a minute and pretend that everything was done right, and they did rule out their third party experts, their third party culprits, then I understand why it wasn't allowed to be brought up in court, because they aren't charged, they're not being investigated. We cleared them. Okay. But still, we have other reasons to bring this stuff up other than just to throw a reasonable doubt situation in there. Could there have been other avenues to maybe pursue it? Maybe, but I don't know how they would have got there without even. I felt like some of the testimony the witnesses gave, and even Holman himself, opened the door to other things that could have been brought in and discussed at that point, but they weren't for some reason. You know, I don't know if that's because of the way the judge's rules were set up and this third party culprit crap. Are they just saving some of this stuff for appeal? Like Sergeant Randy Jones, for instance, who gave the affidavit about wearing the patches on his uniform, how he personally filmed Richard Allen himself, but where was he at court? Nowhere to be found. And I don't understand why. Because he was a direct Odinism angle tie, you know, because he wore the Odinist patches. Was that why he wasn't allowed to come into court? Because Gold said we can't talk about this stuff, and we can't get around not talking about that when we bring him on. You know what I mean? It's like, but I think they can bring up this third party stuff in an appeal process.
I guess we'll find out, because that's a pretty key issue, right?
Yeah, I would think so. As far as this investigation went, you know, will it matter in the appeals process? I don't really know. You know, how are you going to appeal this conviction? Are we going to appeal it on a legal basis that there wasn't enough evidence allowed in court, or that the judge tied the hands of the defense, things like that, technicalities, this arraignment process that may not have went through until long after an arrest and imprisonment, you know, all these, it would be interesting to see where they take it on appeal as to what particular parts they fight as far as their appeal process. Because you got to have something. You can't just walk in there and say, well, we don't like your decision and we still think we're innocent. We want a retrial. We're doing this over. That's not how it works either. You got to have something to make that appeal stick legally. So it has to be more than just the idea that something else could have occurred, I think. And that's why you see a lot of attorneys get things on the record. Like Ann Taylor does it over in the Idaho case. There's certain things she knows she's not going to get, right? But she needs to get it in there on the record that she tried. Otherwise, she's not effective counsel. That's the way it works. And that's a lot of what papers the court to death. That's a lot of what takes up a lot of the court's time. This part of the necessary process. You know, we don't want a guilty person to be able to come back and say later, oh, my counsel was ineffective. They didn't do a good job. And then they're like, okay, well, you're right, technically. So now you got a technicality, you know. It's just, I don't know what the appeals process in Indiana would be like and what's allowed and not allowed. I guess we'll start learning that process when Bob Mata starts going through it.
Yep, we're all going to learn it together.
Yeah, we will. We'll learn more as we go. I want to be able to sit here and say I feel like those girls got true justice, but I can't say that with a whole heart. And I can't help but not be concerned about Kathy Allen. To know that where she has to sit with this tonight. You've been waiting and waiting and waiting and hoping for the right thing to come out of the case. And now here you are with this kind of verdict. And if you truly believe your husband's innocent, what do you do with that? You know, have you lost all hope? Do you have any more fight left in you to continue? You know, I mean, it's got to be such an exhausting experience. Either way you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have any finality in this decision.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I guess if you believe he's guilty, it's a final decision. But if you have any doubt at all, It's not.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Some of us have so much doubt and we can't help it. And it's not because we didn't try. You know, I don't think that was the case. And I don't think it was just a case of a bunch of people on the internet screaming this person's innocent. There's actual legitimate reasons behind why we think that, you know? So, don't know. I'm getting hungry. Like, I accidentally stumbled across some food videos on the YouTube while I was looking at something else. I'm like, why am I watching these damn YouTube videos about food?
Right.
Now I need to go make something and I don't want to. Can I just order it? I don't even get DoorDash out here where I live.
All right. Let's.
So, no. Yeah, the Weber discrepancies, and then we heard that how Weber got aggressive on the
Okay,
stand.
let's wrap
We
it up.
also heard Sarah Caldwell got testy on the stand. So I guess even after seeing that with Weber, it still didn't make an effect on the jury, I guess. So, all right, Joe, you say you're ready to wrap it up?
Are you ready to wrap it up?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be others going live later to talk about this as well. And we all got, it's crazy. Thanks everyone for coming in and joining us and listening in to our talk about the verdict. Yeah. You're welcome, Dizzy. I'm going to start working on getting ready to present the next case that one of the cases I'm following. So